If you would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you all for coming out. We appreciate it. We've got a busy agenda tonight, so why don't we go ahead and get started. Could we start with a adoption of the meeting agenda? Is there a motion to adopt the meeting agenda?
Mr. Mayor, move to adopt the meeting agenda.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. We have a busy night. We have
Sir?
Yes.
May I do the roll call?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
My apologies. Go for it.
Roll call. Mr. Baruch?
Here.
Ms. Conley?
Here.
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Ms. Oliver?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Mr. Z?
Here.
And Mayor Tarter?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. We have some important business on the agenda, as you all know, and I'd like to get right to it. Is Miss Janet Haynes in the room? Miss Haynes, are you here? Would you please approach the podium? Come on down. Come on forward, please. This is a very special day, I think, for all of us, hopefully particularly for you, Ms. Haynes, but thank you very much. Why don't you come to the podium? I'd like to read something special for you on the occasion of your 90th birthday and all your fine service at the City of Falls Church. So we'd like to proclaim May 2nd, 2015 as Janet Haynes Day. So, if I could, I'd like to read the proclamation, have you come forward, and I think some of your friends as well would like to join you up here. So, whereas Janet Haynes is celebrating the occasion of her 90th birthday, and whereas Janet Haynes has been a member of the Falls Church City Police Crossing Guard Unit since 1967. 1967, wow. Whereas Janet Haynes has contributed greatly to the community through her service as a crossing guard at the St. James School, and whereas Janet Haynes has safely escorted 3 generations of students under her tutelage with an extra smile and wave to thousands of motorists and pedestrians. Whereas Janet Haynes has received numerous accolades, among them being a Grand Marshal for the 2013 Falls Church Memorial Day Parade and countless nominations for Employee of the Year. Now, therefore, I, David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, do hereby proclaim Saturday, May 2nd, 2015 as Janet Haynes Day in the City of Falls Church and urge everyone to recognize Ms. Haynes' non-Agerian milestone. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that right, but it means you get a whole lot of service, and we really appreciate it, and celebrate the life and accomplishments of this generous woman and longtime city employee. Thank you so much for your fine service. Would you like to come on up and receive your proclamation? And I tell you, for friends and family and colleagues from the police force would like to join her, I think that would be a great, great honor. And if you in the audience would like to look, there's also a slideshow going up on both sides of the screen. There you go. Thank you so much for all your accomplishments and your. Keep on coming down. Anyone else? There's a few more people left in the audience, so come on. If anyone would like to speak, feel free as well to get to the podium if you have any remarks you'd like to make. We'd be delighted to hear them. Let me give you the proclamation. Yeah, thank you. Chief?
Council, thank you very much. And I just wanted to, in short, say that one of my greatest privileges as a chief of police is to acknowledge a living legacy. A living legacy that through her actions, small actions every day, lives the value on the corner of Spring and Broad. And I think there's 5 decades of community members in City of Falls Church that understand the personal qualities and the human spirit in which Janet Haynes brings to work every day with her peers that are with her, by her side, every day at the crossings, with this department that is so very proud to call her a public servant. And for this community, we're so grateful for your service, and we want you to understand that we love you dearly, and we thank you. Thank you every day. One last thing, James Brooks asked me to, for those of you that are in the audience, her family and friends, there'll be light refreshments and cake downstairs in the police department if you'd like to join us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, our next proclamation is for Fair Housing Month. If I could, whereas Fair Housing Month, fair housing has been the law of the land since 1968. Whereas the city's fair housing ordinance prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, marital status, national origin, sex, elderliness, familial status, or handicap. And whereas as a community and as a government, the City of Falls Church is proud of the cultural enrichment brought by our citizens who claim heritage is linking them with Africa, Asia, Central and South America, and Europe, and those of all races, religions, ethnicities, and ages who come to Falls Church from all parts of this country. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, P. David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, on behalf of the Housing Commission, do hereby proclaim this month of April 2015 as Fair Housing Month in the City of Falls Church, and call upon all citizens to support the city's total commitment to the fair housing for all our citizens. Do we have Julio Abroyo? Would you like to come up? Oh, here you are. I'm sorry, I didn't see you over there. Come on up and receive the proclamation if you could. Congratulations.
We've also passed out a handout for public officials, a fair housing guide for you to use.
I just want to say thank you so much for what you have done to the city too. And I just wanted to briefly invite the director of Casa de Virginia, because I have this good news for the city. The new organization called Casa de Virginia is settled right now in the City of Falls Church, and they are bringing really good experience in helping the community. And I would like to invite Lindolfo Carballo. He's going to introduce the Casa de Virginia. And really good organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Thank you very much for having us here. My name is Lindolfo Carballo. I am the director of Casa de Virginia. We just established here a couple of weeks ago with Falls Church Community Economic Development. We are a community-based grassroots organization that is a membership organization also. We already have 4,000 members in Virginia, and we advocate for affordable housing and basic human rights. Also, we educate and organize the community for civil rights issues. So thank you very much for having us. On May 13, which is on a Wednesday at 11 a.m., we're going to have our ribbon cutting, and you are welcome. You are invited to participate in this very important event. And here are the invitations for you to take. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck on your endeavor. Okay, our next proclamation is declaring May 3rd through the 9th as Public Service Recognition Week. Whereas since 1985, the President and Congress have designated the first week of May as Public Service Recognition Week for state, federal, and local employees. And whereas each day of the year and at all hours of the day and night, city and school employees provide critically important public services to citizens of the city of Falls Church and the region. Whereas the City Council and the Mayor ask the public to join them in recognizing and celebrating the city's and schools' dedicated employees for their work in providing essential services to the public, including promoting public safety and the highest standards of professional law enforcement, providing a world-class public education for our children, hosting and promoting wonderful special events, enriching our lives with great books and library services, maintaining our streets and sidewalks, providing vital stormwater and sanitary sewer services, developing recreational programs for all ages, caring for the elderly and persons in need, promoting well-planned, high-quality development, caring for our trees, and providing for Falls Church style of personal, responsive customer service at all times. And whereas we ask more of our city with each year, and city and school employees go the extra mile to meet the needs of the Falls Church citizens. Now, therefore, I, P. David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim the week of May 3rd through May 9th, 2015 as Public Service Recognition Week, and thank all city and school employees for their contributions during the past year, which helped make the City of Falls Church such a great place to live, work, and play. Thank you. Is there anyone who's going to receive this proclamation?
Mayor Tarter, members of council, I would just say that I'd be happy to receive it, and I'd like to invite Superintendent Dr. Tony Jones, if she's in the room, to come forward and receive it as well. But I would just say briefly that we're very proud to live in a community that has so much public service imbued in our culture, with our citizens who serve in the federal and state and military levels of public service, as well as our local governments. And so we're very proud to accept this recognition that I think is for everyone involved in public service, including all of the members of our community who volunteer as well.
Dr. Jones, would you like to join us? Madam Clerk, do we have any oaths of office to administer?
No, sir.
I think Mr. Wong, are you here to receive the oath of office? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Why don't we call Mr. Wong
I guess
forward
we
for the
do.
AARP?
Sure. Thank you. Hi. Just raise your hand. I
I,
state your name.
Victor K. Wong,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia,
and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
and that I will faithfully and impartially
I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent upon me
all the duties incumbent upon me
as a member of the Architectural Advisory Board,
as a member of the Architectural Advisory Board,
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
And just need you to.
Congratulations. Thanks for your service. Madam Clerk, are there any other oaths of office to administer that you're aware of? Okay, great. So why don't we go on to the receipt of public comments? Thank you. Would you like to give us a summary of the written comments received?
Certainly. We have several. Lisa Varuxis of 301 Grove Avenue, in regard to Mason Row, expressed concern about the height, number of residential units, traffic, feasibility of a theater, the location of the loading zone, and the affordable housing unit offer. Cindy Wackerbarth of 304 Walnut Street asked the council to continue to refine the plans for Mason Row to address height, character, and traffic implications. James Tice, 500 Meridian Street, supports funding the school request. Claire Dunn of 353 James Street is against a tax increase and asks the council to look into legislation that prevents residents from paying more than 10% of their income for real estate taxes. Dan Ayer forwarded his letter to the George Mason High School PTSA, asking them not to lobby the city council on one point of view regarding the budget. Charles Plymeyer supports a flat tax rate. Mark Quave, 413 Lincoln Avenue, urged the council to reject a tax rate increase. Marcia Kaufman of 444 West Broad Street supports a flat tax rate. Adam Hughes supports a 1% tax increase and fully funding the schools. Bethany Henderson, Madison Lane, supports fully funding the schools. She urged the council to make budget decisions based on a coherent long-term vision. Aaron Gill, 603 South Spring Street, urged the council to fully fund the school budget request and move forward on Mason Row. Mary Kate Hughes, Knollwood Drive, asked that the budget include adequate funding for the schools. She said that teachers should be valued with competitive pay. Jean DeRoss, 502B Walden Court, supports fully funding the school budget request and has concerns about cutting staff in the schools. Monica Fries, 415 Poplar Drive, supports a 1% tax increase to fund the school budget. Michael Short, 601 Hillwood Avenue, supports funding the schools and raising the tax rate accordingly. Megan Velez supports a 1% tax increase to fully fund the school's budget. Catherine and Ron Seacrest of 208 South Lee Street support the 1-cent tax increase but would have preferred to cut no teaching positions. Donald B. Jenkins of 1430 Southwest Street does not support a tax increase and is concerned about the impact of the tax rate on seniors. Michael and Brittany Sakata, 402 Northwest Street, support a 1-cent tax increase and fully funding the school budget request. Chrissy Henderson of 110 Grace Lane supports the school budget request. Kathleen Tice of 500 Meridian Street supports fully funding the school budget and supports Mason Row. And the following citizens voiced concern about the school and general government budget and services, real estate and sales tax rates, and requested that the City Council delay a vote on the budget so details can be worked out and communicated to the public. There were Pat and Priscilla Gianelli, Mark Kay, Ira Kalin, Allison Kuchma, Dave Kuchma, Linda Nabergall, Kristen New, Sam Mabry, Anthony Mayer, Evie and Michael Mort, Eric and Sajila Ramsey, Bill Royce, Mark Scardiglia, Bill Shellstead, Mark Quave, and Victor Wong. And we did have a few that came in after these were produced, and I forwarded them, the emails to you as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any council member requests? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Baruch?
I think Veronica may have just printed out what I had asked for.
Cindy's on the way down with it. This is the two-pager that was emailed out earlier.
Yeah, if we can just make sure that's publicly available and also up on Granicus on the website.
Okay, so with respect to folks who want to speak tonight, you'll have ample opportunity to do so. Got a stack of cards here, but we're going to hear from everybody. You can either speak now before we get on to the matter, which won't be too long from now, but you can speak now if you'd like to leave, or you can speak when the particular matter is called. And I've got everyone's name here. Is there anyone who wishes to speak now and maybe not stick around? If you do, okay, please come on up, sir. And you as well, ma'am. So we'll start with you, and then we'll go on to Ms. Berry. And could you state your name, please, and your address, and you're limited to 3 minutes.
Absolutely. David Schwinn, 602 Dorchester Road. This should not be, our budgets should not be a matter of we and them, whether you have kids or don't have kids or had kids go through the school system or didn't have kids going through the school system. I think we need to look at the life cycle, the life of a resident in the city of Falls Church. And I'd like to ask a couple questions. How many people in this room have lived in the city for 5 years? Don't have to answer it. How many people have lived in the city, owned a house or a business in the city of Falls Church for 5 years? For 10 years? For 15 years? For 20 years? For 30 years? For 40 years? For 50 years old? 60 years? My point is this. We as a community need to keep our eyes and budgets open to the fact that there is a whole world of senior citizens, of middle-aged folks, kids, people that move into this area without kids, people with kids, trying to take their kids through school, make sure they get a great education. And I would just ask, honestly that everybody look at these dollars that you're willing to hammer out and charge us for and wonder what's going to happen with the seniors, with the neighbors that have to move out, because currently, as taxes just keep climbing, and as we get older, matter of fact, most anybody over 45 or 50 knows that typically your income does not keep skyrocketing. It usually starts to drop off. Your kids grow up, you want to live and die in your house, you want to stay part of your community, part of your neighborhood, and I just think that we will be nothing but a transient group or population that only comes in long enough to see their kids take advantage of the schools, which they should, and then sell and go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Berry? Welcome. Thanks for coming out.
Good evening, Council. My name is Johanna Barry, 111 East Jefferson Street, Falls Church, a proud resident of this city for 30 years. Given the time constraints this evening and the important work before you, I simply wanted to add my name to those who are urging the Council to hold the tax rate flat and reduce the transfer to the school division. This is not simply an anti-tax request, but a plea for parity, and it is a plea for sustainability. Once again, city infrastructure and management needs are being reduced, eliminated, or delayed in the service of the school division. The school division has not made a credible argument for an increased transfer, and as we know, while the Council cannot dictate line item changes to the school division's budget, it may provide guidance, and I urge you to do so. The trajectory with which the school budget is growing and the gap being created between available revenue and current expenses is steep and growing steeper. We cannot sustain increasing taxes and decreasing services. Let your decision tonight benefit the entire Falls Church city community. Let your decision tonight support the common good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Nabergall, would you like to speak now?
I would like to speak. I would like to read a written statement, but it's allergy time in Tree City, and I'm not sure I'm going to make it all the way through.
Okay.
So, with the council's indulgence, I have asked Sajila Ramsey, if need be, to step in and finish my statement. So, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. I speak to you tonight with respect for the time and effort you spend in service on the City Council, but also with deep and growing concern over the direction of city taxing and budgeting policies. I'm concerned by the inequitable allocation of revenue between schools and city government. I am here to ask you not only to hold the tax rate steady now and start now to think realistically about how to bring the school budget under control, and with it, the city budget and taxes driven by it. I start by, sort of sadly, by taking issue with a recent unfortunate statement by Mr. Snyder, although he's not the only one who's been heard to say this, referencing, quote, that small segment of our population that doesn't support the schools, end quote. It neatly encapsulates all that has gone haywire in city budgeting and spending decisions. I ask you, Mr. Snyder, and everyone else who spouts this ugly and dishonest characterization to just stop it right now and forever, because it serves only to distract and sow division and disrespect. It's beneath you, or should be. I take a back seat to no one in my support of our schools. My husband and I have paid property taxes that have generously supported our schools for nearly 40 years, excuse me, and without ever having had children enrolled. Supporting our schools does not mean that we must do so blindly or unthinkingly, nor should we ignore the fact that an inequitable amount of those tax dollars increasingly has gone to the schools without an adequate public accounting of how the money gets spent and at the expense of services, programs, and facilities that benefit the general population. I also ask the council to be more honest and straightforward with us about the real cost of our school system. It is not true that the school budget represents only 45% of the total city budget. That 45% only covers operating expenses. Taxpayers are entitled to understand that in reality, total school costs also include long-term construction bonding expenses that routinely have been hidden in the city-side budget. In reality, school spending eats up closer to 60% of total city budget. The budget cycle, this budget cycle, it's the infamous sleight of hand fake savings school bus switcheroo. Similarly, in deciding the school transfer amount, please stop hiding behind the partial truth that we have no control over our school operations. You do have control over school spending through the power of the purse. You just need to find the political courage to do the right thing and scrub the school budget request of unnecessary, unaffordable, improperly allocated expenses. Then you reduce the transfer payment by that amount, give guidance by explaining your reasoning for the transfer reduction, and leave it to school administrators to readjust their operating plan as they see fit. Are you telling me my time's up? Yes. Well, are you going to cede your time to me?
Yes.
Thank you. Rather than cutting teaching staff, a truly student-centered school administration will cut the fat out of overhead costs, eliminate non-classroom expenditures, reduce technology costs, and stop spending excessively on PR and lobbying that divides our community into us and them. Please do not base your budget decision on the disingenuous claim that our property values depend entirely on school spending. You know full well that there are many other potent influences at work, like proximity to job centers, highways, and varied transportation choices. You would do well to respect the fact that many of us choose to live here for compelling reasons other than the schools. Finally, it is utterly shameless and unacceptable for anyone to tell us that if we don't like the taxes, we can just sell our homes and go someplace else. We don't want to leave, and our government should not put us in that position as a matter of ill-considered policy. It appears that the fix is in for another disproportional increase in school spending at the expense of other critical citywide services and programs. The explanation being that the school population has increased. In fact, citywide population has increased with resulting pressure on general government. An equitable budget distribution must take that into account. I hope I'm not being overly optimistic when I ask you to require of the schools the same sacrifice you ask of the rest of us, and that you not raise taxes even 1 cent. Most of all, in conclusion, you'll be glad to know, most of all, I ask you to demand of yourselves and our school system a more open, honest, transparent budget process free of politics that will be worthy to regain lost trust and respect. Thank you for listening, and I hope actually hearing my concerns.
Thank you very much. If I could just ask that people keep in mind the 3-minute time limit going forward. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak right now? You can speak later, but if you'd like to speak now, please approach the microphone, state your name and address, if you would.
Hi, my name is Erin Gill. I live at 603 South Spring Street. Good evening, Mayor Tarter and members of City Council. First, I would like to thank you all for your service, your hours of dedication, and your willingness to be available and listen to all the citizens of Falls Church. My husband and I moved to the city of Falls Church in July 2012. At the time, we had a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old. We bought our Cape Cod from a couple who had lived in the house for 28 years and raised 3 children in the home. They bought the home from the original owners who lived in the house for 30 years and raised 4 children in the home. We now have 3 children, age 5, 3, and 10 months, and hope to live in this home for the next 30 years as well. I remember sitting on our front porch with my 2 boys the summer we moved into the house and seeing 0 children walk by. I remember going across the street to Roberts Park and being the only people in the park, regardless of the time of day of the week, or weather. I remember thinking, where are all of the children? After all, we moved here for the schools. Surely the neighborhood must be packed with children. Over the past 3 years, we've watched our neighborhood change and, more importantly, grow. In that time, within a 1-block radius of our home, 9 homes have sold. Those homes are sold by empty nesters to families with elementary-age children, 15 children in total. In the past year alone, 3 of us have had another child. That makes 18 new children in 3 years, in 3 blocks. And our small quarter of Virginia Forest neighborhood is not the exception. The same scenario is playing out all over our city. The schools need money because the schools have more children. Not only are the schools trying to do more with less in decaying and insufficient facilities, they are trying to serve more students with less. At the same time, our city government is also trying to get by with less. Our facilities are crumbling, and our library and city government employees are working in substandard conditions with out-of-date HVAC systems and unsafe infrastructures. We need money to fund the schools and repair City Hall and the library, but the solution to this problem cannot rest solely on the backs of the taxpayers. While we are excited that more families have moved into our neighborhood, we do not want to see our neighbors without children forced out of their homes because of rising taxes. And that brings me to Mason Row. With this increase in our population and the need to fund the growth of our school system and improve our city infrastructure, there's also a need for smart retail and commercial development. Many of us talk about how we wish we could spend more of our money here at home. Instead, we find ourselves spending money in Merrifield, Tysons, and Arlington. We have the capacity and ability to draw better businesses to Falls Church City. We should seek out destination dining and retail opportunities, as I know some of our council members are doing. We should also help the current businesses at Broad and West who want to remain in Falls Church City by waiving fees and other permit costs that may arise as they relocate within the city or find temporary operating spaces while Mason Row is under construction. While I do have some concerns about the size and density of the residential piece of the Mason Row project as proposed, I think it would be foolish to allow this opportunity to slip out of our grasp. Falls Church City has the highest median income in the United States. Let's keep that income here in Falls Church City. Tonight, as you weigh your options on how to proceed with school funding and the other CIP projects before you, I urge you to do so with a view to the future. What should Falls Church City look like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Do not just look to the next fiscal year or the next election cycle. I urge you to fully fund the school's budget request and move forward with Mason Row and other smart development of the city. I urge you to invest in the future of our city and of our children. As others have said, just because the young families are not here in droves speaking out at these meetings does not mean we are not paying attention or discussing these issues. We are, and we will continue to have a louder and greater voice going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for speeding up as well. You did a great job of accelerating at the end there. Yeah, take a breath. Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll get all of you. But, okay, Mr. Kay, why don't you go up next? And again, there'll also be another opportunity when the matter is formally called before council.
I will be very brief. I think many of you already know my views. I've emailed you. I do oppose the tax increase. Just to give some background, I've lived in the city 15 years. My son is a graduate of the high school. I've seen the tax rate go from approximately $1 per 100 to what it is now, about $1.30 per 100. Of course, assessments have gone up over the same period. My intent is to live in this city and continue to live here. I really like this place, but when does this stop? And I'm going to leave it to the people who spoke before me and will speak after me about many details about the budget. But I will say, I think it's time that the City Council has to take charge of the schools and manage them more aggressively. I know the argument is that the school system, it's a separate body, they have an elected board, but you are the superior body, and I think that the path that we're going on right now is not sustainable in the long run. Tax rates cannot keep going up forever. You need to take charge and instill fiscal responsibility at the school system. I do agree with the earlier speaker here, we do need more development. I do endorse that fully, but that is going to be a long run. That is not going to happen next year. It's not going to happen in the next 3, maybe even 5 years. It's a long haul. In the meantime, I encourage the board or the City Council to please keep rates where they are right now and work with the schools going forward to bring costs under control. And lastly, I do want to thank you for all your time and effort. I do know that these are hard jobs and you spend a lot of your time working on it, and I do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Yes, sir. Why don't you come on down if you could state your name and address for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes. It'd be most appreciated.
My pleasure. My name is Joel Block, and I spend the majority of my time at 7130 Broad Street. And I am the chairperson of the Professional Educators Advisory Council. Tonight is about representing your constituents. As you know, elected officials are representatives of the people who elect them. Tonight, I'm asking you to represent the vast majority of the people that elected you. In our city, there's a small group of incredibly involved people who will fight taxes, even though their property values are growing at a rate that significantly overshadows their taxes. Property values that are growing largely due to the school's reputation. In our city, there's an even smaller but louder group of about a dozen families that would have you postpone the vote on this budget. This group uses the internet to promote their own agenda and keep their voices relevant. This tiny group enjoys the game and their perceived power. They would like the process to go on forever. Finally, there's the vast majority of your constituents who favor fully funding the school board's budget. When this city was asked to choose this year, they voted overwhelmingly in favor of the Mount Daniel construction. The people of the city believe that funding high-quality, strong schools is a priority. The voters understand that fully funding the school board's budget will result in a tax increase of less than 1%, but a tax increase. They understand that you want to say that you voted against taxes, and yet they want you to vote for taxes rather than cut the schools. If you're here to support fully funding the schools, even though it will result in less than a 1% tax increase, could you please stand up? I have 3 minutes of, I was under the impression I had 3 uninterrupted minutes.
You are speaking. I'm not going to stop you from speaking.
I didn't require anything, ma'am, and I still believe this is my 3 minutes. The people in this room that elected you, these are the people that put their trust in you. These are the people you represent, and this is the majority. Please represent the majority of your citizens by voting to fully fund the school board's budget. Thank you, as always, for your hard work and taking time to listen.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lamoni, did you want to speak now? Come on forward, please.
John Lamoni, 304 Great Falls Street. All of you have received, all of you at the dais have received already a copy of this, but I thought it would still useful to make an oral presentation. When considering the vote on the proposed 2016 budget and the 5-year CIP, I urge you to step back and consider the long-run consequences of your actions. To this observer and 30-year resident, it appears that the strategy of our city leaders is to beat the little city's collective breast over our, quote, world-class school system and use the Falls Church public school system as a highly subsidized loss leader to attract new families to Falls Church. This strategy lines the pockets of real estate agents and the developers and those opinion leaders allied with them, who are the ones who benefit from this growth, and puts increasing pressure on the provision of city services, both school and non-school, and adds to the already large unmet non-school capital infrastructure needs that benefit all citizens in this city. A basic question is why taxpayers who do not share in the generous subsidies of the school system are being asked to provide private school quality to high-income families, which only serves to exacerbate the educational inequalities now widely recognized to be a major contributor to the high and growing income inequality in this country. We cannot know how many of these families will stay in the city beyond their children's school years to pay an adequate amount of taxes to help defray some of the generous subsidies they have received. But we do know that there are a significant number of transits who will not. Need I mention the State Department's internal policy of sending families temporarily awaiting new assignments to reside in Falls Church and take advantage of these subsidies? Meanwhile, those of us who have lived in the city for decades and have been dutifully paying our ever-rising taxes through all the ups and downs of the real estate market receive a bare minimum of city services to show for our taxes and are encouraged to move on if we don't like the unfairness. It is galling that the degree of unfairness is masked by at least two separate practices on the part of the city. First, the overall intransparent budgetary accounting system of the city significantly hides the true size of the share that Falls Church Public Schools accounts for in the overall city expenditures. Secondly, whereas the Falls Church Public School leadership and public affairs staff are fond of showing the trend of expenditures per student and cherry-pick information to back up their claim for more resources, the city staff itself makes no attempt to show the trend in basic categories of non-school resources spent per resident to provide a valid comparison. I'd like to say more about the long-term problems with revenue growth, but I would just like to say this. Decision makers in our surrounding jurisdictions appear to recognize these trends of slow revenue growth and are attempting to rein in their own school system expenses as part of the effort to adjust to the new situation of long-term tax revenue growth and stagnation. And will you, our city council members, show the courage to do the same thing in the interest of long-term fiscal responsibility, or will you continue to play fiscal games, pursue your own self-interest at the expense of long-term tax-paying residents and the increasing risk of future severe financial stress? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, are there any other speakers who want to speak now? And whoever comes up, you can say whatever you like. And if you want to call for people in the audience, that's okay. It's your free speech time. So go ahead and speak, ma'am.
Letty Hardy, 125 South Spring Street. As I shared before, we've been residents and homeowners in Falls Church City for over 12 years now. I am a significant part of the population of young professionals and young families in this city who are excited about smart development that we can walk to, where we can keep more of our incomes here, and we care deeply about the excellence in our schools. We've been so thankful that our children have flourished and are growing in the city and have the same opportunity to grow up in the city that their dad did 35 years ago, and we look forward to seeing the city change and grow for the better. Thank you on the council for your patience and open ears during this budget cycle. What a tough job. I've only been here for a handful of meetings. I know it must be tough to hear everything. It's been evident to me after hearing all these discussions, as I'm sure you all know as well, is there's a very vocal few set of people who oppose any, no matter how small or big, tax increase, with tons of scrutiny on what the schools really need, why they need this money, why we aspire to be like ABC School District, why we can't pay our teachers less like XYZ. There are just as many of us who share that concern about tax increases, but we want to see our schools funded through better prioritization. I don't believe necessarily in increasing our taxes either and paying for more services, just more taxes, but it's wrong to frame the conversation as an either or. We cannot pit neighbors against each other by framing the conversation as, do you want to pay more taxes to fund the schools? It's not that simple. We can't do everything, I agree. Instead, we should be asking about what projects, schools and general government projects, can be deprioritized in order to focus on what's most important. There should be just as much scrutiny on the projects on the rest of the general government side, but I rarely hear comments or discussion on those. We should be asking, what has the greatest citizen impact? What brings in revenue? What improves the city in the near term and the long run? And finally, what services do your constituents actually want and are willing to pay for? Last week, I read through all 320 citizen-provided comments in the CIP survey that was done in the fall. And out of the 320, only 8 comments said they wanted to see City Hall improved, and not all of them necessarily said they were willing to pay for it with increase in taxes either. 8 out of 320. Schools, parks, and pedestrian needs were at the top of the list, but I don't hear discussions about the latter two. Every single friend and neighbor I've spoken to has been surprised to hear that there's a $5 million City Hall renovation planned. If we can find $5 million for City Hall improvements in the next year, how can we not find $340,000 to pay for 4 teachers? Our teachers are beyond worth it. They're amazing, dedicated, creative, and passionate about our kids. It's time we recognize that teaching should be one of those careers where we pay top dollar to attract top talent. I've heard anecdotes that this is the toughest budget year yet, and things will be looking up as more commercial projects finish up. Yes, I know I've heard all the safety issues and HVAC issues that need to be addressed, but many other needs are not prudent to take on right now. I urge you all to consider deferring certain government projects until we have more commercial revenue coming in, which is all the more reason not let projects like Mason Row slip by. After hearing the concerns raised at the last City Council meeting, please don't let perfect get in the way of the good when it comes to things like Mason Row. The keystone of Falls Church City is in our schools. Attracting and retaining great teachers and keeping small class sizes is really the foundation. And realistically, that helps everyone's property values high, whether you have kids in the school system or not. I hope we can be more critical of what we truly need across the city's budget, not just the schools, without the detriment of our kids and the future of the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to address council at this point? You can address council and speak when the matter which you want to be here for, probably the budget, is called. So with that, I guess we'll go on ahead and move. And Mr. Castillo, please come on up.
Actually, good evening, Mayor Tarter, distinguished members of council. I would wait, except right now in the cards, it looks like I have a evening train to take up to New York City, so I don't know when the next comment period will start, so I'd best weigh in now. There is little to be said that hasn't been said already about the budget and about the issues. I think a lot of this comes down to why we live in Falls Church, why Falls Church exists. If you look back in the history of the city, it has not always been a history of agreement and accord about the mission of the city. There's always been a great deal of tension and debate that may be for the good. But I do think that we find ourselves in a jurisdiction with a lot of characteristics that are unique. You don't have a place with the size of a school division that we have here. You don't have a jurisdiction inside the Beltway of this size. And some of the question that arises, some of the people who have commented here say, why don't we just go over to Fairfax County, just outsource everything and fold the tent up? That may be an option, but that's not why I live here. And I don't think that's why most people live here. This is not an easy place to coexist with some very behemoth-sized jurisdictions. I think it's a tribute to us all that we've survived for well over 50 years, and I'm optimistic that we'll make it for another 50. The other thing to bear in mind is the amount of work and sacrifice that went into building what we live in today. The amount of capital and energy that went in the 50s and 60s to construct places like City Hall, the library, the high schools. Frankly, we're at the end of service life for many of those places, including this building that we're in now. That's going to require a lot of hard work to address what have been some perhaps deferred capital needs. At the same time, I'm very optimistic about the future of this city. I think there are great development possibilities here in this city, possibilities that will propel us forward and that will generate the kind of economic development that people have been clamoring for. I think we need to look at those hard, negotiate wisely, and embrace them and drive them forward as much as we can. The ask today for the school board comes in at about 46% of the total budget. That is lower than historic norms. That is a fact about the operating budget. For the past 10 years, the capital allocations between general government and the school board have been about, I believe, 50-50. Dr. Jones, correct me if I'm wrong about that. So this idea that somehow the schools are eating the city alive, I think is not supported by the facts. I understand this jurisdiction is changing in immense ways. We had 2,400 odd students in 1965. We were down to 1,000 when we moved here in the early 90s. And people were talking about the viability of the city not because there were too many students, but because there were not enough. There's a sine wave. There are demographic changes, and we have to embrace those. The last thing I would remark is we are looking at a cut in headcount of five people into this budget, so it is not a growth budget. The final thing is I hope that the debate tonight is engaged in sincerely and with civility, and with that I thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to address council at this point? Okay, seeing none, why don't we call the first matter, Madam Clerk? Yes, Mr. Gittens, would you like to come up? Yes, of course, please come on up. It's a nice break. Did not hear about the budget, so.
Well, I chose this evening because of budget night. No. Good evening, Mayor Tarter, Vice Mayor Snyder, City Council members. My name is Tom Gittens. I live at 153 West Annandale Road here in the city of Falls Church. I've lived here and have had a business here for 15 some odd years. And I am here to invite you all and all the faces that I have not seen at First Friday. So First Friday of Falls Church, and let everybody know that it has moved, or at least at Art and Frame of Falls Church, the home of First Friday. You can find the various activities of First Friday at firstfridayoffallschurch.com. And as I just mentioned, the home of First Friday has moved to 205 West Jefferson Street. And this Friday, May 1st, is First Friday. And if you're familiar where Quinn's Auction House used to be, and where CSI Printing used to be, we are now in where CSI Printing is, on the corner of Maple and 205, and Maple and West Jefferson Street. It is the new home of Art and Frame of Falls Church, the new home of First Friday of Falls Church, and now the birthplace of Jefferson Street Artisans, where we'll have 18 art studios to kind of create the mini torpedo factory, if you would. So come this Friday, First Friday, from 6 to 8 p.m., you are all invited. And I do want to thank very much Becky, Jim, John, and Gary, and the other people in the permit office for helping me get the permit, the occupancy permit. They were quite efficient, so City Manager, thank them please for me. I look forward to seeing everybody here at First Friday in Falls Church, and I do want to thank the EDA for helping support First Friday.
Mr. Gittens, so First Friday begins at what, 5:30? Or
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
The Harley String Band will be performing, and photography by Peter Tomlinson will be showcased at Art and Frame of Falls Church.
And will you still have the car show as well?
Unfortunately not with the move, which I got to go back to this evening because we're actually moving in there tonight. But September's First Friday will have a grander outdoor and classic cars coming back.
Sounds good. Sounds like lots of fun. So hopefully you all can join them, and I'll be there as well, hopefully.
Please.
Thank you much for all your good work. Okay, so it looks like, Mr. Shields, you've got the budget and capital improvement together as part of one slideshow, correct? So should we go ahead and call the first items then together?
Okay, we have a second reading and public hearing on matters related to the budget. They are TO 15-04, TO 15-05, TO 15-06, and TO 15-07.
Thank you. Mr. Shields?
Well, thank you, Mayor Tarter, members of council, members of the community. We have been working very hard over the last 2 months on reviewing the budget that I presented to the City Council on March 9th. And my purpose tonight is not to redo any of the past presentations, which we've had many iterations of as we've gone through the initial presentation, our budget open house, which was sort of a new way to try to get information out to the public and engage the public on our budget. We had 2 town hall meetings, 3 public hearings, this being the 3rd, and numerous work sessions. And so again, my goal is not to review all of the things that are in the budget or in the capital improvements program. They are extensive, but instead to review some of the changes that have come about through the public input and through the work with the City Council, School Board, and staff working towards closing the gap that was in this budget when it was initially presented. And in short, the budget on March 9th had a $1.4 million gap that required a real estate tax rate of $1.34.5 or a 4-cent increase in the tax rate. It included growth in general government operations of $531,000 or a 1.5% increase in expenditures, and the school board requested increase of $1.9 million or a 5.3% increase. We had debt service increase in the budget for the Mount Daniel School, and we had FY15 non-recurring revenue that we needed to address with FY16 budget. And so all taken together, those were the components of the items that were addressed in the budget and the resulting gap. And so we've worked through a whole host of options to close that gap. I think the most important and lasting has been the change that the city and the school worked through together to change our health plan provider for our city employees. And with that change, realize savings that will accrue to employees in terms of reduced premiums that employees pay, a very similar benefit structure, and a total of $597,000 in savings in the general government budget. And so that was a very significant, sort of the first change that we made in working together. Subsequent to that, the council asked for additional options and other adds and deletes to the budget, and I want to review those. The use of excess bond proceeds is $305,000. This is familiar to council. It was done as part of the gap closing last year. But when we sold the bonds for the Mount Daniel Elementary School, as part of that sale, which goes through a competitive auction process, there were excess bond proceeds. Our original intent for the use of those bond proceeds was to use it to defray future capital costs, i.e. the TJ HVAC system, which is in the budget for FY16, which will be debt financed. That was a use that this $305,000 could go towards. It also can be used to defray interest costs, and so as part of the gap closing measures, it would be used for that purpose, and that would be a one-time benefit for FY16 and would not recur in FY17. We've had a lot of discussions about our funding obligations for WMATA, and in short, our funding obligations have gone up. At the same time, one of our significant sources of revenue, gas tax revenues, has gone down, as we've all benefited from lower gas prices at the pump. But as working through solutions for that, we would propose to use NVTA 30% of the local money to fund our WMATA obligations to a significant degree in FY16. This also is a one-time solution. It's matched with the local contribution towards WMATA costs, and that will not recur. And so this is a one-year solution. We've also discussed the Treasurer's initiative to join a higher yielding investment pool, the VIP pool. And so if we increased our investments in that pool to $15 million, that would generate an additional $39,000. That's in the budget that's before the council tonight in both versions. Other measures was to handle the George Mason High School campus planning study effort. In the school board's request, in the transfer was a request for $100,000. In both versions of the ordinances that are before the council tonight, that has been taken out of the school board transfer and moved instead to the capital improvements program. The funding level of it has also increased to $250,000, and that will be funded with capital reserves. The Treasurer's Collections, there's a current temporary employee in the office who was initially hired through a temporary agency to do water collections. That employee is now largely engaged in collections of parking tickets, photo red citations, and that type of thing. And the proposal is to retain that employee at least for an additional year to continue that collection activity, and the net fiscal impact of that is projected to be $100,000. The school bus was part of the school board's request in the transfer. That remains in the transfer, but instead of being funded through cash, it would be funded through debt. It would be folded into the debt issuance that we're already planning for fleet replacement on the general government side. Other changes through the budget add-delete process, funding for catch was restored to the FY15 level at $25,000. The police radios are in the both versions of the budget that are before the council. Those would be debt financed as well. The transportation planner is in both versions of the budget. That would be funded through a carry forward from FY15. The council funded this position through an amendment to the budget in FY15. The position has not been hired, so the unspent funds would be carried to FY16, and we would use a cost allocation through capital improvement programs to fund the position as well. This would be, and it has been advertised as a term position, so it would be revisited as part of the FY17 budget. And then there were a handful of other minor additions and deletions that I could speak to if there are questions about them, but of not great significance. So with all of those budget closing measures, the remaining gap then was $340,000, and this is what we discussed at the work session a week ago. And so at the council's direction, 2 ordinances have been prepared, and ordinance that is titled Option 1 has a real estate tax rate of $1.30.5, which is no change to the real estate tax rate. There is a reduction to the school transfer of $340,000, and with that, the school transfer would have a 3.3% growth relative to the 5.3% growth back on March 9th. Ordinance number 2, or option 2, would have a real estate tax rate of $1.31.5. That's a 1 penny increase in the tax rate, and would have a school transfer at a 4.2% growth. I want to talk just about some of the debt service and other implications of the budget, just so we're all aware of those. But in terms of the items that we would propose in the budget to fund with short-term debt, i.e. 5-year term debt, this would be the dump truck replacements, the police vehicles, the school bus, that's plural, but what's in the budget is not $90,000 for one bus, the police radio replacements for a total of $1.1 million. In our staff report, I did note that we have received a very favorable bid for the dump trucks, and so we would like to discuss funding that as a budget amendment in FY15 instead of FY16, so we can take advantage of that favorable bid price in the current fiscal year. In any event, the debt service would come online in FY17, the way that the debt would be, due to the timing that the debt would be issued, and the annual debt service that would recur for 5 years would be $260,000. The long-term debt that's scheduled to be issued in FY16, we have transportation improvements, and that would serve as our local match for the use of the NVTA funds for WMATA. In the FY15 budget was funding for a firearms range, which we're doing in conjunction with Fairfax City. That's $300,000. And then the Thomas Jefferson Elementary School HVAC system at $2 million. So the annual debt service that would come online in FY17 is $340,000 per year. So in terms of the impacts on FY 2017, taken together, the decisions that are built into the FY16 budget, including the debt service that I just noted for the short-term and the long-term debt, the replacement of the NVTA funds for funding WMATA, which is a one-time benefit, And then the one-time use of the bond refunding, we have a total of approximately $1,580,000 of costs that we will take on board in FY 2017. In terms of looking ahead to 2017, there has been a good deal of discussion of some of the favorable fiscal happenings that we anticipate. And without going into a full model for FY 17, if you simplify down to certain things that we believe we know or we can reasonably rely on, the city pension, based on the actuarial report for 2014, projects a reduction in our annual pension costs of $510,000. The ROI for the funds that were invested in the pension, the long-term average ROI is anticipated to be $640,000 per year. Of course, that will vary from year to year. And the fiscal impact from new development, which is $1.2 million projected for FY 17. So that's the net fiscal impact. That's after already taking care of the expenses that are associated with the new economic development. There's a projection of a positive fiscal impact of between $2.3 and $2.4 million in FY 17 from these items. Looking ahead also to FY 17, we also have a lot of the things we've wrestled with this year, which is the need for sustained funding for infrastructures, fleet replacement, a whole host of items. And these, I think, are items that we need to continue to wrestle with, and they will be front and center as we do our FY 17 budget development as well. Just a couple of them that I would note. The NVTA C&I equivalent for 30% projects. This has been something we've discussed now for 2 years, and if we're going to take advantage on a sustained basis of the opportunity of the state funding for local projects, we'll need to have a sustained match for that. The voting machines, this is a state mandate to replace our voting machines, and so we will be looking for that in the FY 17 budget, we believe. The other items that are listed there. There will be many more, I'm sure, but this is an initial look and a sifting through of the unmet needs that are in the current budget. Real estate tax rates in the region, with the two options at $1.31.5 or $1.30.5, our tax rate does remain in the middle of the tax rates for the region and on the lower end of the tax rates for the smaller jurisdictions in Northern Virginia. The counties do have lower tax rates than the towns and the cities, with the exception of Fairfax City. And this is a graph that we've been showing at our town hall meetings, but it basically is a scattergram that shows the correlation between population size and tax rates. And if you have population on the lower axis or the horizontal axis and tax rates on the vertical axis, the lower population jurisdictions are all centered in this area here in the city of Falls Church, with a tax rate of either $1.30 or $1.31.5, is on the low end of the smaller jurisdictions, with the exception of Fairfax City. And then our counties with their larger populations do tend to have the lower tax rates over here. We did have a good deal of discussion about other impacts, like the local composite index, our commercial to residential ratio over tax base, and all those are important parts of our fiscal picture in the city of Falls Church. In terms of the median home tax bill with the two options, there would be a median increase of $354 due to assessment growth for the median homeowner in the city without any change to the tax rate. With a median home value of $643,000, every penny on the tax rate costs the median homeowner about $64 in terms of their annual real estate tax bill. As the council has deliberated the budget, the council has adopted financial policies, and those are part of all budgeting decisions. The city does currently enjoy the confidence of the financial markets in terms of of debt financing for our capital projects. Because we are currently maintaining fund balance at our policy targets, we do have strong capital reserves, and with this budget we will retain the majority of the capital reserves that were the 85% designated for long-term capital. The only use of those funds is the $250,000 for the George Mason High School campus study. We have well-funded pensions, and we do have significant economic development activity in the city, the benefits which we'll see in FY17, and a record of strong financial management by the City Council and staff. And all of those have contributed to the confidence that the markets have, and we need to always keep our eye on these as we go forward, particularly with the size of the capital program that we have going forward. And then lastly, budgeting is about vision, and the council has had to keep in mind, as you've listened to the community, all the input that you've gotten, keep in mind our long-term plans and our vision for the future, which the council has worked very hard on through this process. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, and those are the slides I wanted to present tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. Why don't we hold off questions for a moment and probably go into public comment. Did you have something you want to say, Mr. Duncan? I'm sorry. Did you want? Oh, I'm sorry. We've got our disclosures as well. Ms. Conley?
I just have a disclosure to read. I have consulted with the city attorney and make the following declaration before City Council's consideration of the proposed fiscal year 2016 city budget. I am an employee of the Falls Church City School Board and therefore am a member of a group of 3 or more persons that may be affected by the approval of the FY 2016 budget. I can participate in the transaction fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
Thank you. I have a similar disclosure I'd like to read as well. I have consulted with the city attorney and make the following declaration before City Council's consideration of the proposed fiscal year 2016 city budget. My wife is employed by the Falls Church City Schools, and therefore I'm a member of a group of 3 or more persons that may be affected by the approval of the FY 2016 budget. I can participate in the transaction fairly, objectively, and in the public interest. Thank you. Okay, so we've got a whole lot of speakers. Mr. Duncan, did you have something you wanted to? Go ahead.
As the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, I just wanted to say a personal note that I believe we can all up here say we greatly appreciate the public input we received during the budget season. It's really a privilege to represent a community that cares so deeply about its schools and municipal government. Personal note of thanks to so many of you who, in the course of offering your views, have taken the time to express your appreciation for the time we all devote up here to trying to do right by the city. It's true that much work has been done for many months leading up to this night. I recall meeting last summer with Susan Carney, who was then the school board chair, and telling her that I had 2 priorities that were at the top of my list. One was getting Mount Daniel bond referendum approved. The other was holding the tax rate level. She agreed on the Mount Daniel, and we agreed to keep talking about the second. And talk we have. In meetings of the Budget Committee, and here I would like especially to thank my Budget Committee colleagues, Mr. Baruch, Ms. Conley, Ms. Oliver, in meetings with council, with staff. Thank you very much to Mr. Shields, Mr. LeCondre, Ms. Mester, for other staff also for all the work you've done. We've just had a lot of conversations over many months. I expect you'll hear tonight that we've not all reached like mind on the best way forward, but I hope you'll also hear tonight that we each try to seek out facts and bring our best judgment and our personal experiences to the decision before us. To give the public an opportunity to speak, I'll suspend any further remarks unless you would like me to make a motion, or do you want to hold that for later?
Why don't we hold the motion? You'll be first on the motion list, but why don't we hold off on the motion until we get through our public comment. So I've got a whole lot of speakers, and I'm going to call you. If by chance you've already spoken, just let me know. But our first speaker is Amanda Blanchard, followed by, no more Tom Gittins. Tom, are you still here? I've got Tom's card, but followed by Evelyn Mort. So our first speaker again is Amanda Blanchard, followed by Evelyn Mort. Again, if you could state your name, your address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes, it'd be most appreciated. Thank you. Welcome.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Did you want to make clear that there could be 3 separate public hearings that people can speak at, but that the first one is on the budget and the CIP?
Yes, I tell you, I mean, we're going to have lawfully, legally, we need to have public hearing for each of the different items. So you can either speak now, and I suspect most people want to do that. If by chance you want to speak, for example, during one of the other items, whether formally before this board or this body, you're welcome to as well. But go ahead and speak to, frankly, any of the budget items you wish to at this time. I'll open it up again later on. So go ahead. I'm sorry to confuse you.
No
Go ahead,
worries.
Ms. Blanchard.
I am well versed in this process. Amanda Blanchard. I work at Mary Ellen Henderson Middle School. I have been there for almost 15 years now in its many iterations of the middle school. And I can tell you that this is not the same city nor the same school system that I came into. And I'm not sure that's a bad thing. I think our population is growing, our real estate is growing, our general retail is growing, and I think that's going to make us a stronger city and able to support both our city and our schools in the long run. Right? I think things I just wanted to kind of keep notes to myself here over the evening. I believe there's been 3 referendums for the schools since I've been here, and all 3 of those referendums were supported by the city, which I believe means that they support the school system. Right? The reality is we have more students. More students require more staff, and great staff require payment for their services. I think that's an investment that the community wants to make, and that investment will ultimately fall into your hands to decide whether or not the school system's funding is appropriate. I believe it is, and I think any cuts in those funding is going to have an impact on the teachers that are available to teach those students who come from our wonderful city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Evelyn Mort, followed by Sajila Ramsey. Ms. Mort, thank you for coming.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you very much for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Evelyn Morton. I live at 154 Reese Place. You've probably never seen me here before because I've never really had a major concern for which I wanted to come forward and speak. And today I do. And the first thing I would like to say is I would like for you to please hold the tax rate steady. Hold it steady, please. The reason for that is I don't mind supporting our school system. Just to let you know, I don't have children. I don't have children involved in the school system at all, enrolled in the school system at all. But to fund a school system blindly is what disturbs me. And to hear that we're going to cut teachers, those who directly educate our children, is mind-boggling to me. When we can look at the very top administrators, and we know we can cut a lot from there, there's a lot of fat that we can skim, literally. And that really is irritating. I can remember every school teacher I have ever had. The good ones, the not so good ones, the fun ones, the not so fun ones. But at the end of the day, those were the people that impacted me the most. Improper allocation is what I have a problem with. Teachers are important. Why cut them? The other thing I have a little issue with is on the city side, that collector position, the temporary collections treasurer position. To collect $100,000, we're going to be paying that position quite a lot of money, even though it's temporary. Can't we just outsource that? Get a collections 33%, make a lot more. So that's really all I have to say. I just want to make myself know that I am supporting of the teachers. I really do want the teachers to get paid what they deserve. I don't think we need to cut teachers if you put the money exactly where the mouth is. And look at other areas where you can cut back, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. Mr. Block, I think, has already spoken. Maybe he's even left. So Ms. Ramsey, followed by Ms. Neighborgall, although you've already spoken as well, right? Followed by Ms. Hockenberry.
And if I have any time left over, I'll just yield it to any of my colleagues here. On page 6 of the schools...
Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, sorry. Sajila Ramsey, 1000 Parker Street.
Thank you.
On page 6 of the school's PR brochure is a kumbaya-like statement by Jason Castillo, that is at the crux of what a growing chorus of residents are taking umbrage with. At least that's what I believe. And he says specifically, budgets reflect priorities, which makes the budget season a good time to reflect on and discuss the future of the city of Falls Church. When I say the city, I don't distinguish between the schools and the city. We're all in this together. So quite frankly, I beg to differ with that statement. I think if anything, there needs to be a much clearer boundary between the schools and Falls Church City's budgets, which currently is not the case, and my colleagues that are here will comment quite specifically on that with good facts. But until the schools pay our taxes for us, we are simply not in this altogether. That's all.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hockenberry, followed by Mr. Laporta. Welcome, Lindy.
Hi, I'm Lindy Hockenberry, 1208 Seton Lane, and a very proud retired school teacher who's been involved with the school system for about 44 years now. I taught 31 years, and now still sub in very much of everything that's going on. I also had the proud opportunity to represent some wonderful teachers, some of them here and some of them long gone, for over 20 years, coming before the city council and the school board and working with the school board and city council for our schools and for our community. I live on a fixed income, and I know it's going to get a little bit harder. And I know that eventually, not only due to money, but not wanting to stay in a big house forever, that I'm probably downsize, but I will not leave this community. This is my home, and I absolutely love every single about of it. I believe strongly in schools. They are, you know, you hear this all the time, but they're our future. Those kids are the ones that are going out, and they'll be the leaders, and the ones who are already out there leading. I believe that strong schools equal a very strong community. I think that the best teachers equal a great school system. And I think that for the past, present, and future students, that's what we've got to recognize and be aware of. So I just want to say, along with, you know, the budget as a whole, and knowing that in my other hat being on Planning Commission, that I also know that we need some badly needed infrastructure that has been neglected over the years, and all of that, and with the general budget. But I'm just proud to pay taxes to support our great city and to support our wonderful school system. And I will never change that, in my opinion, no matter how I might have to adjust my budget along the way, because that is just my dearest held belief, is in school and in the kids. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Laporta, followed by Marquet, if you'd like to speak again. It looks like you would know. Okay, so followed by Victor Wong. Mr. Laporta, welcome.
Good evening, Your Honors. Gary Laporta, 130 Chanel Terrace. First, I want to thank you guys for what you do. You're in a no-win job, and frankly, I think you all qualify to be on the cable show Dirty Jobs. And you still have more coming with future issues. I want to give a big thank you also to all the city staff who work to find additional expense reductions, especially our Human Resources Office that saved us $500,000 by changing our health insurance providers. Also the Finance Office and others. Okay? On the downside, I'm not so comfortable with moving items to new debt issuances. I think that's just pushing off things that we're going to find come back to bite us later on. And to this young lady right here, I would invite her to come spend a day with us at City Hall. so we can sit in the elevator and pray we get to the next floor. We can do the shake, rattle, and roll as it goes up or down. Have her sit with us while we try to listen on the phone when the AC cuts in, because that is a terrible thing. And we would also wouldn't mind having some assistance helping the elderly people in City Hall open and close the doors that are very difficult to do. So we do need work. I don't know about the situation in the library as much, but I know City Hall needs a renovation. The other thing is, as I have said many times, you know how I feel about comparing us to Arlington. I'm generally totally opposed to that. However, tonight you're going to hear it come from my mouth. The school transfer, whether it's option 1 or option 2, represents 46% of our budget. Arlington's budget percentage is 41% of their budget. So tonight, we might want to think about maybe we do want to be like Arlington. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laporta. Our next speaker is Victor Wong, followed by, I've got Mr. Lamone here, but you've already spoken. Would you like to? You're okay. Okay, followed by Ira Kalin.
Thank you. Victor Wong, 914 Park Avenue. I just wanted to thank Wyatt Shields for showing that 1 cent is going to add about maybe $64, maybe up to $100 to our annual tax bill. In the overall scheme of things, that's nothing. My opposition to the budget is transparency and openness from the school system in terms of providing information and detail about their budget. I love detail. I love numbers. But when I look at it, I see just overall numbers. I want to see the detail. I want to see the nitty-gritty where they come down to all the dollars and cents. So from my point, I want to see the details before I would approve the budget as it is. And for all those people saying all our teachers should go to Arlington, here's a little secret. DC schools pay a whole lot more than Arlington. So for all those teachers in Falls Church, go to DC. Granted, you might have to work in Southeast. Yes, there are gangs, but you know, the pay is great. So if we want to talk about pay for teachers and everything else, it's not always apples and oranges. Pay is not always the issue. It's the quality of the work environment, the quality of your coworkers, where you work, and the environment. So let's get away from the pay that we want to be like Arlington, we want to go to Fairfax, we want to go to Alexandria, anywhere. It's not the issue of pay, it's how to find the funding, how to be appropriately balanced with our budgets and our detail. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kalin, followed by Mark, is it Quave? Quave? Okay, good. You'll be next. Mr. Kalin, welcome.
I'm not sure you're going to say that.
I doubt it.
Ira Kalin, 429 Park Avenue. And unlike my usual presentations, which are sugar-coated, I'm going to tell this one like it is. Context. To understand how we ended up with the budget proposal whose very foundation is based on short-term fixes, it is useful to see how we arrived at this perilous situation. We are aware that a number, but not all, of council members look at budgets as a year-to-year event. Actions of the past are never taken into account, and the consequences for the future are ignored. The steps that put us into the financial quagmire, quicksand, were first, in 2012, City Council decided to give tax credits of $1 million and $500,000 for iPads from our surplus. The so-called three-way split was offered and steadfastly promoted by Dave Tarter. It was supported by Phil Duncan and approved by a last-minute heroic intervention by Dave Snyder, who cast, as I say, the deciding vote. All of the money that was tax credited was taken back in 6 months, and a further tax rate increase approved in the following semester. In 2013, the school division requested a 14% transfer increase. Johanna, Barry, and I recommended a 10% increase, a number, I might say, originally proposed by an ex-school board chair and sitting member at that time, Craig Cheney. Our proposal was 10%. The proposal was defeated 5-2. Had the 10% been accepted, an additional $1 million could have been used for future known expenses. Excuse me. These numbers add up to 6 to 8 cents on the tax rate, depending on whether the iPads are included. If these egregious misjudgments were not made, we would not be here, as they say, dialing for dollars to make the budget balance. Of course, once the imbalances were at hand, the temptation to find short-term fixes, commonly known as gimmicks, was irresistible. This year's budget has to compensate for last year's gimmicks by, for example, replacing funds that were taken from the general fund used to cover the previous year's shortfall. This year's budget gymnastics have an added feature, a proposed flat tax. The contortions are very troubling, especially the continued transfer of costs to the city, including but not limited to debt funding, school operational costs, thus increasing tax rate pressure. I'll just read one paragraph more and then I'll get off. It is probably more by accident than design, but the very people who created this year's budget crisis are now trying to take credit for solving the problems they created. In so doing, they will make future budget discussions even more difficult to manage. I have some other statements, but unless somebody wants to give me a couple of minutes.
I'll give you my time.
Okay.
Steve Lyons, I believe my time is.
Yeah, I don't really know. We've not really done this so much in the past. You can keep going, Mr. Kalin, but in the past, I don't recall being able to kind of accumulate time, like everybody's time, and someone can talk for half an hour. Keep going, but I think in general, we should try to stick with the 3 minutes to the extent we're able to.
We've done this in the past. There's more than ample precedent for this.
Look, it's fine. Keep going, but for a reasonable time, please.
What is truly scary is they may not even be aware of what you guys have done. The council should step back and simply approve a budget that has the city and schools growing at the same rate. It's far from perfect, but is much better than the proposals currently before us. I've seen, this is separate and unrelated to these comments, I've seen the school division's bullet point defense of its budget request. It is a jaw-dropping experience in its assertions. In order to give the schools, or Mr. Horn, a head start, I'd like to let you know I will be issuing a FOA to the school division asking for, among other things, all financial data that supports their assertions. Of particular interest is the claim that TJ funds were returned. As you've mentioned, or as a city manager has mentioned, there is a $2 million request in the CIP. So I'd like to know where this money was returned. I will also be asking in a separate FOA the city for data entries to the city's income statement that would verify the school claims. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kalin. Is it Quave? Did I pronounce it correctly? Thank you. Okay, and our next speaker will be Christina New.
Good evening. I am Mark Quave of 14 Lincoln Avenue. I also own a rental house in the city. I lease office space in the city, and I have some kids already through the school system and one still in. I have some concerns. I have concerns about city taxes. I pay city taxes on real estate. I pay taxes on cars. I pay taxes on food and drink I consume in the city. I pay city taxes on business assets. And I pay city taxes on business sales. I pay city fees for business licenses and business occupancy permits. I pay a regular parking fee to the city. And I just started paying a tax on my stormwater, and I don't even know what that means. And even though my property assessments have been going up most years, now I'm being told that property tax rate needs to go up too. Yesterday, I learned that a leisure tax is planned or contemplated to subsidize Mason Road development. Stormwater tax, leisure tax, and what's next? I can't even guess. I'm concerned that we have a bloated school administration that costs taxpayers $2.4 million per year, while at the same time, that administration tells us there's not enough money to hire all the teachers we need. I'm concerned that we pay a lot of money to communication specialists on the school administration staff who spend a good amount of their time sending us messages about how good a job they are doing and what hardships are in store for us and for our children if the school system is denied anything. The school administration has its own ministry of truth. That ministry needs to go on a permanent mission trip. I'm concerned that the true cost of the school system is understated to the taxpayer by the use of accounting procedures that are misleading. Is a school bus really not a school expense? Is a $450,000 cost for field maintenance and track repairs at the high school really not a school cost? I just don't believe it. I'm concerned that we may increase taxes to provide additional funding to the schools to stave off teacher attrition when teacher attrition is in fact minimal, and at a time when the school system has control of $1.5 million slush fund, and at a time when the city services its borrowing money to pay for pothole repair and trying to deal with a $500,000 budget deficit. It just doesn't make financial sense to add to the school slush fund when the city is getting what amounts to payday loans to pay for pothole repair. I'm a little concerned, but mostly curious, why the city council holds meetings or parts of meetings that are closed to the public. Lastly, I am also concerned that rising costs are promoting more and more persons and families, especially those without children, to move out of the city. These are the citizens that underwrite the cost of educating our children, so we should hope they stay, if for no other reason than to help us pay our bills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Christina New, followed by Steve Lyons. Welcome.
Hi, welcome. Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Christina New, 413 Lincoln Avenue. Thank you for your service to Falls Church City and for taking time this evening to listen to the citizens. My chief concerns with this budget is the lack of transparency, the fabrication of unjustified needs, and the continuous pilfering of city budgets. Please note that just because I don't support the budget does not mean I don't support our schools. I like our schools. I love our teachers. And a lot of times that's correlated. That's not true. Let me give you an example of the transparency issue. The school board initially requested $1.6 million to address the salary gap in teachers' pay because apparently we were losing people to nearby Arlington. I support our schools and our teachers, but I disagree with attrition being an issue, and I recommend council keeps the tax rate flat. Several people have repeatedly asked for the data to substantiate this claim that we are specifically losing teachers to Arlington. The most recent answer we received is, quote, "We have lost 13 teachers in the past 3 years," unquote, and that was all she wrote. This answer came from a school official that makes over $300,000 a year, including benefits, and holds a PhD. If any of our Falls Church City school children would supply this unsubstantiated claim in a research paper, they would certainly fail. I don't believe losing 13 teachers is a problem, and if it were, it should be supported by real data based upon exit interviews. Even more surprising is that City Council doesn't question this statement and argue that they don't have any control of the school budget. Since City Council controls the budget, shouldn't they be able to say no to budget requests or ask basic due diligence questions? I've attended several Falls Church City budget meetings, and I was surprised to learn several issues that are of major concern. Firstly, and this may be a news flash to many in this room, the developers of Mason Row are going to ask the City Council to impose a leisure tax on all the residents of the city in order to give this high-quality retail and theater project a subsidy. Why are the citizens required to pay for this and not the patrons? Is the subsidy the only mechanism for viability of this project? Even more taxes for our little city? Secondly, the fiscal FY15 budget has a deficit between $400,000 and $600,000. This will be carried over to next year's budget. We are kicking the issue down the road because our budget is not balanced. A balanced budget is basic and prudent accounting. Thirdly, the city will have to borrow money in order to repair potholes due to lack of budget planning. This is an expensive option for typical city maintenance requirement. Last but not least, the city is paying approximately $400,000 to repair the George Mason athletic fields and more than $90,000 plus financing to purchase a school bus. Why does city budget include school items? Not only does the city pay for the school field maintenance, but then the city rec department pays the schools to rent those fields. It appears there is $1.5 million in the school fund. These are excess funds that were not used for school expenses. Why can't we use this to pay our teachers? Why can't we use it to maintain the fields and other school items that are required? My point is there seems to be a lack of transparency and a lack of information to the citizens of Falls Church. It's our money. The information should be shared and also be used to make prudent budget decisions. I hope you take this into consideration in tonight's vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Steve Lyons, followed by Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Mayor, your clerk confirmed that she received my written comments, which is fine, and I yielded my time to Mr. Kalin, so I'll pass.
Okay, if you'd like a very short moment, okay, great. Mr. Kelly? You're known around my house as Mr. Kelly, the teacher of several of my students, so welcome, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. My name is Farrell Kelly. I live at 600 Roosevelt Boulevard. I've been a resident of the city now for a couple years, and very pleased to be here tonight and to live here as a resident. I want to thank you all for all the hard work you've put forth over the past few months. I've been lucky to come to some town halls and the open house and be here a couple of times. I thank you for the opportunity to speak and for being willing to listen to all of us tell you our heart's desires. I grew up in Arlington, as I mentioned last time I was here, and I just wanted to point out that I have only lived here for 2 years inside the city, but I've known the city for my entire life. And I've always known it as a place that was, in many respects, defined by, known for, and built on the reputation of and the quality of, not just the reputation, but the actual quality of its schools. We've heard a lot tonight about doing what's right for everybody, and I would like to propose that funding the schools is what's right for everybody. The schools drive a lot of the value of this community. It's what makes this community unique, in addition to the size, in addition to its geographical placement, but Falls Church is the schools. Now, I don't mean to say that it's not for everyone. It absolutely is. But I do get a little frustrated to hear that constantly this we versus they versus you, us versus them feeling. We are in this together. This is a time to think about what we want. I want, and I hope that you want, schools that represent the best that Falls Church has to offer, the best that the nation has to offer. I do want to just close by saying that this is not just a request for more and more funds. The schools are not looking to eat up the city's budget. The request as a percentage of the size of the city budget has remained fairly standard over the course of the past few years. In fact, it's remained standard in the face of student increases of up to 20%. This is big. The students who are in our schools today deserve the same quality of schools that the students that were there 5 years ago deserved, the students that were there 10 years ago deserved, the students that were there 20 years ago deserved. School populations have varied quite a lot over the past 50 years of Falls Church history. They've gone from, as Mr. Castillo mentioned, from 2,400 to 1,000, and now they're back on the rise. And the city has managed to survive. Every year we hear that it is a problem that cannot be surmounted, a problem like we've never seen. And at some point, I hope that you will make the choice to decide to do a revenue sharing program that allows us to plan for the future in a responsible manner so that we know what to expect on the school side, on the city side, and as a whole unified community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Pat Gianelli, followed by Tony Jones. Mr. Gianelli? Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Gianelli, yes, sir.
Okay, good. Welcome. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you for having me. Pat Gianelli, 1404 Ellison Street. I don't have a nice speech prepared. I kind of fly off the cuff, so try and keep up, please. Thank you. I'd just like to say that I've been sitting down tonight earlier. I was going to go early and speak, but I wanted to hear what most people had to say about the upcoming debate between the 4-cent tax increase, the 1-cent tax increase, or the flatline tax. And it could go either way, but you've got people saying that we need to fully fund our schools and keep giving our teachers and administrators raises all the time. I'm all for the schools. I've got 3 children who in total have spent 3 years in the city school system. My children go to St. James School, which is a very good school in the City Falls Church as well. My children don't go there. I still pay taxes there. I've never once asked for a tax credit because my children don't utilize the school system. However, since I'm at the microphone, if you'd like to pass a tax credit for private school tuition, that'd be great. I'd also like to mention that no doubt we hear the political machine going on about, not in so many words, that if you don't support the tax increase, you don't support the schools. And if you don't support the schools, you don't like children. And if you don't like children, how dare you even live here? Just heard a gentleman over there, probably a great teacher in the City of Falls Church, saying that this, Falls Church is the schools. It's all about the schools. Falls Church is about the citizens in the city of Falls Church, the people that choose to live here, the people that commute to Washington, D.C., Arlington, to Tyson's. Our base here in the city is about community. School is a great point and a great thing to have here, and more affluent people move here and by choice choose to increase their home values by adding on, keeping them good, and hence the tax, real estate value goes up. And I saw a flash up there, the median tax increase on residential sales goes up $354 with no tax increase. Mine went up over $1,000 this year with no tax increase. So if you look at my taxes now, they're about over $10,000. So in about 10 years' time, I'll be spending $100,000 just to live in the city, period. I've got clients that look at me and say, I want that house, Patrick, but I can't spend $200,000 in 10 years on that house just to live in the city of Falls Church, so we want to move out of the city. Where else do I go? Just going to paraphrase something I pulled up offline today. It's a quote that says, I absolutely love what I do on a daily basis, and I can promise the community of Falls Church that I will always be focused on what is best for the children. That's from the Superintendent Tony Jones over here. Requesting raises every year and putting the city budget, the school budget, on the backs of the taxpayers. I don't know a teacher who has said, I'm going into teaching to get a $300,000 salary. They do it because they love it. Administration gets paid a little bit more, but I believe we have 2,500 students in the City of Falls Church and 150 admin positions, roughly. That's a hefty salary for a 2,500 children's school system. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tony Jones, followed by Letty, is it Harden? Oh, you already spoke. Okay. Did I get your name right? Okay. Thank you. That'll be Tony Jones, followed by Aaron Gill. Oh, you did as well. Okay. So, and then Allison Kuchma, did you speak already? Or did you? Okay. So you'll be the next speaker. Welcome, Ms. Jones.
Thank you. Tony Jones, 444 Broad. First of all, let me just make a comment to the last speaker. The salaries that are online, and I know they went out again today, are incorrect. Those are not the salaries of our administrative team. And it's frustrating for us to have things on a blog. But, you know, we teach our high school students that blog, which used to mean weblog, is really now a bunch of gossip. And unfortunately, it's sad, but that's the day and the age that we are in. As your school superintendent, I want to remind you that city population is growing, the school population is growing, and the pieces of the pie remain the same. We are not asking for more than our share this year. We are not taking more and more. That is a fallacy. We are, in fact, asking for the same proportional amount of city revenue that we've needed for over a decade. It's less than our neighboring divisions or similar. Generally, right now, it's at 46%. The Washington Post says Arlington is at 46, Fairfax is at 51. If you look at the CIP over the past 20 years, it is almost 50-50, school and city. We are in it together. There are people who will say that we're frivolous with our finances as a school division, yet just last year, the school board on their own accord commissioned an independent company to come in and evaluate our efficiency. This company was recommended by the Virginia Department of Education. They flew in from around the country. Gibson Consulting determined we run a lean organization. Yes, a lean organization. We don't have administrative bloat. All of our senior leaders carry at least 2 full departments. Most senior leadership work between 60 and 70 hours a week, if not 80 during budget season. Gibson Consulting struggled to tell us anywhere that we could cut. Why? Because we operate with integrity and we are frugal. We spend 0 on lobbying and web development, regardless of what folks have said tonight. We have one director of communications who's highly effective at his job. That's it. We have some who say we have cost overruns. When MEH was built, the school division returned $529,000 under budget. When TJ Construction was completed, the school division returned $59,674. At Thackeray, our school site is on budget. Mount Daniel is just beginning, and the cost today, there are no overruns, none. There are no new teachers planned in this budget. We're absorbing 100+ children who are expected next year. The school board took that one step farther and cut 5 more positions from the budget. A cut tonight would take that to 9. That's not okay. Please continue to make the children of Falls Church a priority, keep our schools a priority, not an okay system that gets by. I know some patrons emailed today and actually suggested cutting counselors. We're already cutting a counselor at the high school this year. We cannot cut another counselor and take care of children. We also have somebody who suggested cutting an assistant principal at TJ. We'll have 800 children there next year. Keeping children safe is our #1 priority. They also ask about charging IB fees to students. We know that that's illegal. We cannot do that. We have looked at our budget. We have scrubbed our budget. We have done a thorough analysis of our budget. We have fabulous Falls Church staff who love our children, and they create an amazing school system, a wonderful educational system, which is one of the best in the country. Let's keep it that way. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Allison Kuchma. Mr. Lamona, you've spoken already, correct?
Good evening.
I was just going to announce our next speaker as well so that he can get prepared. It's actually your husband. Dave Kuchma is the next speaker, so so you can be prepared. Welcome, Ms. Kuchma. Thank you for coming
Thank you. Allison Kuchma, 813 Fulton Avenue. I just have a couple of things. I don't have prepared remarks. I just have a couple of things. I'm very frustrated with the politics of this process, and I just find it unbelievable that sitting in the council meeting that we're talking about a bus, and it's going to be moved over to the city side, and we're going to incur debt, and it's going to cost us more, but the city side is going to eat that up. I mean, you're fooling no one out here. We're frustrated, and it's ridiculous. And to take things off the school side and put it on the city side, and then continue to say that the school side is only a certain percent makes just no sense at all. And in the beginning of the budget process, the superintendent represented to the community and to the school board that we needed this money because teachers were leaving for Arlington for more pay. And I did a FOIA request, and I was given these 2 documents to substantiate these departures. These are graphs that they don't even say that it's that they're not even titled that they left for pay, so I really can't understand the information that was given to me. I was expecting documentation like files, so, record keeping. I mean, anyone can make up a graph that says, they left. And I expect from my elected officials, I expect due diligence. I really do. I mean, this is below my expectation of what I would see. This is below my expectation of what I would see from highly paid professionals, and I've looked in the budget, and I do know how much they make, and I would give it a very low grade. The other thing I want to say, and Mary Beth, you're part of this community. We care about you. Our kids played soccer together. But I wouldn't be a good friend if I didn't tell you what many people are saying. You have a senior position in the school district, and the idea of conflict of interest, as an elected official, we would want you to really understand what that means. And I know that someone has not come to you and deemed it a conflict of interest, but a part of that's really important for the community, because we are struggling with trust issues with the school district tremendously, would be for you to understand that it has the appearance of a conflict of interest. And that's really important to us, to just feel like there's somewhere that we can trust. And so there's many of us that would appreciate if you would recuse yourself from this vote, because it gives the appearance of a conflict of interest, because you are one of those top administrators. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker who has submitted a slip is Mr. Dave Kuchma. If there's anyone else who wishes to speak, however, you are certainly welcome to submit a slip and come on up and speak as well. So welcome to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm Dave Kuchma. I live at 813 Fulton Avenue. And my wife and my family have lived in the city for about 12 years. So we have 3 children that have gone through the school system. And just recently in this last administration, and I hope that as the council, and I'm here to speak about the schools, and that you not vote to increase. I've got some problems with, again, with the press and it's the whole managed by, if I look at it, managed by fear, and I had to go to the budget meetings this year, the work sessions, just to get a taste for what that is like. And it was a little bit, I kind of felt like it was like going to a timeshare presentation to a certain degree, that there were many PowerPoint slides, and a lot of the main ones were all prefaced by, well, how many teachers are we going to have to cut? Is it going to be 20? Is it going to be 15? Is it going to be, 5? And it just didn't seem right. And I hope that you guys see that. Thumb through the budget, go through it. To me, we've got executives. We have executive level people, not just from the superintendent, but the assistant superintendents. They make a lot of money. We have a school size that's like a large high school in a big county. So I ask you to take a hard look at are we really putting the resources where they need to be? And just we're 8.9 miles from the White House. We're 3.9 miles from Tyson's Corner, one of the biggest cities. So our real estate values, it's. I haven't heard location, but we're in a pretty good location. So I think whatever it is here, we're gonna, we'll do okay. But going through the budget, just even at the end of it, there's a reserve for contingency of $172,000, and then I'm hearing that there's $1.5 million slush fund. So I don't know. I've got to ask some questions about the things that are in the budget. I don't know if you guys have looked at it, but I encourage you to do so, because I think it would be a real eye-opener for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last speaker slip that I have is Mr. John Lawrence. Again, if anyone else wishes to speak, you're free to submit a speaker slip and come on up and speak. Mr. Lawrence, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief because you're all probably tired of seeing me. Early morning meetings, late night meetings, weekends, walking the dog. I'm just here to talk about the proposed cut to the schools. Since we first sent you our request school staff, working with city staff, managed to find an additional $300,000 to cut from the schools. Came out to over $200 for the city, so that's together over $500,000 cut. When we sent you our budget, we didn't have any new teachers or any new staff in it. And in fact, as Tony said, because of not filling positions that were being vacated by retirement, we actually cut 5 teachers. And as you know, because we've said this over and over and over, 85% of our budget is people. So when we're being asked to cut another $340,000, that's going to mean people. And as Dr. Jones also said, we had a consulting firm come in and look at our administrative operations, not the classroom side, the central office administrative side, and we are running very, very lean. And frankly, sometimes I wonder if we're not running too lean because we keep growing on the school population side, but our central office certainly isn't. So basically, we have to cut another $340,000. That is going to mean people, and that's probably going to mean teachers. It's the bottom line. We need teachers because the school is growing. We're getting more kids. I mean, someone talked about construction around her neighborhood. I've seen the exact same thing. We've been here 15 years, and I can stand on my front porch and point to all the houses that used to have somebody who'd lived there since the 60s. And now they've got 2 kids, 3 kids. So what we need to do, as a citizen and school board member, I'm asking you to fully fund the schools. As a taxpayer, I'm asking you to raise taxes if that's what you need to do it. Because when it comes to the teachers, we need to value them highly, we need to pay them appropriately, but mostly we need to keep them. So please, fully fund the schools and increase the taxes by a penny if needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to address council at this point on the budget, or CIP for that matter? Okay, seeing none, let's move this to council. We will have some discussion as well and an opportunity for you to speak at the tax rate when we'll formally adopt a tax rate, and also when we formally adopt a sewer rate. So there will be an opportunity for you to speak to those matters if you so desire. But at this point, the matter is with council. And so we may have some questions. We may have a motion. I don't know what people would like to do as far as framing the discussion.
Mr. Mayor, may I put a motion on the table and then we can proceed from there?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt TR 15-04, option 1 on second reading.
Do we have a second?
Mr. Mayor, I second that.
Okay, so that's for discussion purposes. Why don't we go into questions now, comments of staff. Mr. Baruch?
So I've got some questions to start off with. Just taking a look at some of the one-time items, Mr. Shields, on the Howard Herman Storm Valley Park restoration work, there's, I believe, $100,000 that's going towards that project. Is that any of that going to be an ongoing, or do we have source funding for it in future years?
I would characterize that as a true one-time cost. The park master plan implementation is composed of one-time expenditures throughout our parks, but we believe that's an ongoing level of effort that's required for our parks.
So let me ask it a different way. That, as I recall, was a project that required more than $100,000. Some of that, I think, was grant money. Some of that may be coming out of the stormwater fund. So when you put that all together, how much of the project remains after this $100,000?
I defer to Cindy on that question.
The $100,000 that's in the proposed CIP before you is the final tranche of funding needed to finish the Howard E. Herman Stream
So
Valley
that would
Park.
finish the project?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, and then I know that Mr. Shields, you and I and Mr. LeCondre have had some conversations about the status of the NBTA and WMATA funding, and I know that's been in flux. Where are we with it right now?
It has been in flux. The WMATA board has been working through what their actual capital program is going to be for the next year. And so the 1.4 million that we envisioned as our local match, that number ultimately may be reduced, or we will identify other local projects that we'll use local funds for, and that will comprise our local match. And we can still use the NVTA funds then for WMATA costs, but there may need to be, as we go through the fiscal year, some adjustments to how we actually provide the local match.
All right, so I just kind of want to cut to the chase on that. So the bottom line is right now, in option 1 and in option 2, there's $700,000 that money is supposed to cover. Is that right? And right now, what you're telling us is, as of today, you don't know if the full $700,000 is going to be available based on what's happening with the funding.
Well,
and let's not make this more complicated.
Right.
Yes or no, and it's in flux, so it's somewhere either 0, depending on where WMATA goes, or 700,000 that they're going to be able to fully fund. We just don't know the total right now.
Yeah, WMATA hasn't adopted their budget, and as the debate has evolved, there appears to be more regional differences, or the regional differences on the amount of capital of the capital program for the coming year and the means of financing. Yet those differences have become more pronounced. And so other options would be to use local transportation projects as our match, and so we would plug those in lieu of an investment to WMATA. In our assessment of the situation, I don't think that we need to take a different route on the strategy that we've laid out in the budget documents, but the overall picture could change over the coming months.
So we potentially have a $700,000 exposure that we're going to have to fill somehow?
I don't think so.
How much do you anticipate that it's going to be if it goes sort of sideways?
I anticipate that we'll be able to use the $700,000 as intended.
And you'll know that when?
Well, we'll know in June when WMATA adopts the budget. I think that will be a helpful piece of clarity on that. But we'll, through the last week, we've been in contact with WMATA just to have these discussions about how the WMATA board's thinking on this has changed since our last formal communication with them on this. And the bottom line is, I believe that the NVTA funds that we were planning to use to cover our WMATA base operating costs will still be able to be used for that purpose.
And then just looking at the gap slide that you showed, and I commend both the city staff and the school staff and both human resource departments for coming up with the savings to the healthcare plan, which is roughly $500,000 or so. Are there actual other savings that are part of the gap closing measure? And what I mean by that is actual savings that are coming off the books, not that are being moved to debt financing or moving from operating to CIP, et cetera, but are true savings on the operating side?
No.
And everything else is sort of either a movement of money from one pot to another or deferring it.
It is composed of some instances of moving, changing how we pay for things. The only addition to that is that on the revenue side, I think the increased investment in the VIP program, we believe, is a sustainable source of revenue.
All right.
Okay, keep going. I just was wondering where the background noise was coming from.
That would be nice.
Some mood music. Thank you, Mr. Benton.
All right. It must be Mr. Benton trying to stay awake with my comments. As he pointed out in his paper, I was putting everybody to sleep apparently at one meeting. Anyhow, we jest. Mr. Shields, in the current budget that we're in FY15, based on some questioning that I had at a work session last week, it was discussed that we're potentially facing a shortfall but staff was looking at that further. Do we have any further numbers on that of where we're at with the current budget, fiscal budget?
We've been looking at that and watching it throughout the year, and so every quarterly financial report we've provided to council, we've noted that certain revenues were not coming in per budget, personal property being the principal one that we've been watching. I would ask Mr. LeContre if he could come forward just to speak to what his assessment is of revenues for FY15.
Happy Monday, Council. As you are aware, and we've been reporting this to you about the flattening of our revenues, we have, during this fiscal year, and particularly in the last month or two, we've looked at all our revenue very often. In your second quarter report, we told you where we were. We gave you a report as of February 28th. At that point in time, we were looking at deficits approaching about $600,000.
So the best number you have right now. So the best number you have right now, Richard, is 600,000.
1 second. Doesn't have it. Our revenue shortfall as of about 5 o'clock is approximately $349,000.
Okay. And then when do you anticipate that we're going to be getting a budget amendment coming forward?
Next month.
And that would be to close whatever gap that is?
We are going to address revenue, and we are going to address some expenditure shortfalls that we know of at this point in time.
Okay, and that range is what?
Of the things we know, we have an expenditure overrun of approximately $500,000. We've identified areas in the budget that we will propose cutting, and that will reduce the deficit to around, the total deficit to around $360,000.
But you're running an overrun. So you've got expenditure growth that exceeded what you were allotted by $500,000, but
Yes.
you think you can cover that by further cuts?
We believe that with the...
Let me ask you this. I understand how you're getting there, but what I'm trying to understand is what is your shortfall without any actions being taken?
Without any actions being taken, the shortfall is about $850,000 total.
So $800,000 is what the decision point is going to be before council? And
Yes.
it sounds like we have some levers to bring that down.
Yes.
But the shortfall right now, because of your overruns and your under revenues, is $800,000, where we stand today.
Yes.
Okay. Significant number, would you say?
Yes.
Fair to say that we haven't seen anything this large since we had the real estate market tank?
I have not seen anything this large since I've been here.
Well, I'll just state, since, I think Vice Mayor Snyder and I are the senior most members of the council. Well, maybe I should take that back, because Dave's been here a lot longer than I have, so I don't want to quite go in that camp. But at least as long as I've served on this council, I have to say, I'm sitting here today, I'm very concerned about the 800,000 number. It's not a number that we've seen anywhere running into deficits or running that razor's edge, if you will, since we had the downturn in the housing market, where we were running major deficits. So I don't know where this is going to go in the discussion, but it's certainly one data point that I hope my fellow council members take into account as we begin to talk about the the various budget options and where we're headed.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Mr. Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While you're up, Mr. LeCondre, the slide on capital capacity strengths, which notes that the fund balance is at policy target in the budget option that we're considering now, that means that it's budgeted to land at what percentage?
Upon passage of this budget, whatever iteration you use, you'll be about 16.3.
Okay, so the budget we passed will show in the policy range of 12 to 17 that we are above 16. Let's just, as a worst-case scenario, assume that we are not able to close the 800 down to 300, as you suggested. If we had to take all $800,000 of the putative shortage out of unassigned fund balance to make the books balance, what would that bring our unassigned balance down to, and what percent would that be roughly?
You'll be under 16.
So if we took all 800,000, we would still have enough in unassigned fund balance to stay above 15? Roughly. I don't want to.
Is there a question outstanding? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, my apologies.
A calculator is at work.
Yeah, I'm doing the calculation. You'll be about 15, I'm sorry, you'll be down about 1.5%.
So it would be around 15?
Yes.
Okay, in the worst case scenario, that would be 800,000 that we would have to pull out to make things true up. Okay, I think that's helpful to know. This is the first year that we've aligned the budget and tax years, right? This is the first budget that we're actually living through with that as the situation. In other words, in past years, we would rely perhaps on a bump up in the real estate collection in June, but this time we are not going to have that because we know exactly how much we're accounting for. So we will end up somewhere in that $300,000 to $800,000 range, probably, unless something happens. Is that relatively fair to say? There's not going to be a surprise surplus in June the way we saw for
There will not be a surprise surplus.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Baruch?
I just have a follow-up to that. This is on the potential use of fund balance. Can you remind the council and the public again of what's supposed to happen once we hit the ceiling of the fund balance and where that money is supposed to go?
In the policy that council adopted in 2012, once we exceeded the 17% of unassigned fund balance, any excess was supposed to go to a capital reserve.
So it's fair to say that if we draw that down to fill any type of shortfall gaps, that's money that's going to have to come in from somewhere if we're going to still meet the CIP needs that are supposed to be spun off by the excess reserves.
That's correct.
You can't double trip the money. If you take
It will
down,
not be available for capital reserve.
right. So it's not pain-free. It's not that it's sitting in some fund that doesn't have some use. The use is supposed to be towards capital, and if you draw that fund down, that just means you either have to pay for it later or not do the capital.
That's correct.
Can't have it both ways. And just on the aligning the fiscal year, if I can just make that one of my legacies while I'm on the council, if that can be called or named after me, as Mr. Shields had coined, I think that would be great. But you know, I'll take my lumps on this one because bringing those years aligned means that we don't have any slips, at least on the real estate, but we do on other line items, and that's what you're hearing about tonight. So there's, that is one of the consequences. Not that I created it, because you all apparently are not spending enough money on cars or going out to eat, but at least we have better numbers to work with, and sort of the extremes have fallen out, and we have better budget numbers that are more accurate, but we can't rely on surpluses basically at the end of the year. So I think that's the point of that exchange.
Mr. Duncan?
Could I just shift our focus to, Mr. Shields, the macro numbers on the city and school division side? So where we have landed is option 1, increases spending for general government 1.3%, 1.2%?
It's 1.2%.
1.2%, which is about $428,000, is that right? And on the school side, the growth was 3.3%, and that is $1.1 million or so, $1.1 million and something. Not sure I saw that number, but I think
I have it right
earlier it was $1.1 million too, but I think maybe it's a little more than that.
It's 1.2 million, 1,232,500.
Okay, so on general government, it's a 1.2% increase, $428,000, and on the school side, it's 3.3%, $1.2 million. For both general government, but especially the schools, salaries are a key component, key cost driver, as they say. Could you tell me on the city side what your average salary increase is in the option?
The average salary increase for police will be 3%, and the average salary increase for everyone who is not a uniformed police officer would be 2.5%.
So police 3%, all other 2.5%. And could you give me the numbers for the school side, their average salary increase?
I don't have that number directly.
It ranges from 1 all the way up to higher, depending on where they are.
What I've heard is that overall the payroll would be increasing by 7%. Is that what's been stated publicly? Okay.
I'm not sure folks are going to be able to hear it, so probably we should all get on microphones.
Yeah, that is not correct, actually. And we can't, with our scale.
Let's back up. Let's tell people what's not correct.
What's not correct, the 7% that Mr. Shields just said. And we can't, with our salary scale, look at it as an average. We have some people who are getting almost nothing, like 1%, especially if they're on the lower end or the upper end of the scale. And then we have those gap areas where those $15,000 and $20,000 gaps are. Those people will see 10 or 11%. So it's not an average across the whole scale. And it is different for a teacher scale because we have a targeted scale to close the gaps.
I recall at the work session, though, either you or someone else saying the average, that include people who got very small increases and those who got much larger increases, the average was 7%. Was that not an accurate statement?
You cannot look at it that way.
Well, I'm just saying, though, was that the number that was given?
It's definitely not 7. Even if we did the average, it might be 6 if you were going to try to do that, but you can't do that with the scale. It's not a traditional scale.
Understood, but I think we were given that information, at least I recall, maybe others recall differently, but that's the information I recall receiving at the work session on
Yeah,
the
it really
blended
depends on
average.
where they are on the scale.
Okay, thank you.
So is it not possible to, I mean, I can understand that there's a wide range, I get that, but I'm just trying, as somebody who, is required to vote on this and explain it, going to the doors, I need to just be able to explain in some way. The city side employees are going to get 2.5 to 3 average, and on the school side, my answer is
1 all the way up to 10 or 11, depending where they are on the scale. And that's why it is a challenge. It's a targeted scale. And to say that everybody's getting an average, we had teachers last year that saw a decrease in their salary because their health insurance went up. And so, I mean, it depends where they are in the scale. At the beginning and at the end of the scale, we are competitive. And so there's very little that's targeted in that area. Those teachers who are 10 and 15-year teachers, that's where the gaps are, and that's where the money is actually going. So we've taken from those at the top, taken from those at the bottom, and put it for the teachers in the middle.
Okay. All right, I'll have to think about that. But
Can I just say something to you, Mr. Duncan? I'm going to apologize because normally on this night, we've already done this at the work session. And so I didn't bring all of my materials with me to answer all these questions. So I'll do the very best I can to answer any that you have tonight. But it's not traditional that we've done this on the night on the dais. So.
Yeah, I certainly agree with the undesirability of doing some of these things where we're doing them. I would have liked to have done them earlier, but we all made best efforts to achieve that. And one question that raises in my mind from what was discussed about the health benefits, the city and the schools save money because of the change in health insurer. Do individual employees save any money too? Is there like portion of the contribution to health insurance affected by the switching carriers?
That will vary depending on what plan you're involved in, but I think broadly speaking, those who are going to go through the Kaiser plan will have either flat or a small decline. Those who are going to participate in the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan will have a larger decrease in their employee premium.
That's the word, I'm sorry. So basically what you said there is that the employee premium either stays the same or declines some for most employees.
That's correct.
Is that true? Again, is that true on the school side as well as the city side? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, would anyone like to make any comments? And the way we can do this, we have a motion on the table. It's possible to pass, it's possible to fail. I would just suggest maybe that people make comments on either proposal, either why they like the one, or why they like the other, or why they don't like either one. And then we can go ahead and move towards a vote on the first option, if need be, have a vote on the second option, or whatever else might be desired to have voted on. Does that sound like a plan to people? Does anyone want to make comments? People not want to make comments on the budget? Okay. Okay, Mr. Z.
Thank you, Mayor. The news this tax season is that neighboring localities have all decided to keep their tax rate flat. Should we be any different? Now, the increase being discussed tonight has been reduced from nearly $300 per median household to, depending on where you live, somewhere between $64, $75, $100. One might call that inconsequential, unless $100 really means a lot to you over the course of that month. You're struggling with trying to figure out what exactly it is that you need to cut out when you're faced with a $10,000 tax bill per year. At the beginning of this process, we tried to find out whether there's an appetite for meeting additional capital project criteria and requirements. I support a 6-cent tax increase. That initiative lasted 30 minutes. So there is no appetite for that. Now, to get to the 1%, as many people here have observed, yes, we've taken a lot of things that could be considered to be legitimate school expense and have moved it over to the city side or to debt funded. Buses, emergency trailers, HVAC, in a school that's just been recently done, planning for George Mason High School campus, new athletic fields, the list goes on. So I said the last time we were in Chambers, we have a simple yet difficult decision to make. And I've reviewed as much as I can the average increase in salaries in all the pay bands as presented by the school superintendent. And the answer to my question that I posed last time, can we make this 4-year project a 5-year catch-up plan? I believe the answer is yes at this point. We have before us a new class of people. People who have children in the school system. for the first time, this new class also says, please don't increase my taxes. There are ways of trying to deal with this. And almost everyone I've heard say, you guys need to figure this out so you don't lay off teachers. The Washington Post recently said Arlington is to spend more on schools. So this catch-up plan that we're embarking on, it would not be year 2 where we face deferring, or as the press would like to call it, smoke and mirrors approach to budgeting, that there will be a consequence next year. And the graphic is actually pretty simple. Mr. LeCondre can struggle with his calculator. I can struggle with my papers here. So first of all, regardless of where we end up tonight, this is where we started, Falls Church. We will be, as has been pointed out, below many of the towns and localities. We will be more than counties, but we have made a significant movement. The average median homeowner property tax bill from 2010, just the accrued value over the course of the next 2 years will go like this. And if we consider the catch-up, your tax rate will be here. That's what the people here are talking about tonight. So for that, those reasons, and there are many more obviously, but the night does get late. That's why I support having a flat tax rate. Thank you.
Okay, other speakers? Any other council members who wish to make a comment at this time before we take a vote on the first option? Mr. Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I've written some things here, and I think I'm gonna try to read them, but they're really not in the nature of a speech. They're really more of a personal plea to the people who are sitting up here with me, because it's obviously your votes I'm trying to persuade. I ask you to support option 1, a plan I believe provides reasonable funding for city and schools, keeps the property tax rate level, and puts our government schools and entire community in a strong position to thrive in the future. The numbers that we just went through, $428,000 increase on the city side and $1.2 million on the school side, I believe a budget built on those numbers will allow us to continue to strive for the highest levels of excellence in municipal services and public education. They'll advance multiple infrastructure projects, including construction of Mount Daniel, planning for the GMHS, MEH land, renovation of City Hall, long needed and required by mandates from the courts in Arlington, and improvements in transportation, public safety, parks, downtown streetscape, and stormwater management. Option 1 provides our teachers and other public employees with pay raises that are fair in an environment where inflation is below 2% and many citizens' household incomes have been just treading water. Option 1 will enable the city to maintain a robust emergency reserve fund, as we've discussed, and it will keep the city's property tax rate from falling further out of competitive sync with rates in our near neighbor jurisdictions, where governing bodies have voted to hold tax rates level in the coming year, Arlington and Fairfax County. Last year, at the beginning of our work on the FY15-16 budget, Council asked the manager and the school superintendent and school board to submit budgets showing restraint in operating spending. Per those instructions, the manager requested a budget increase for general government of only 1.5%. The school board requested an increase of 5.3%. Now, we all understand that the school board's original 5.3% request omitted items they describe as unmet needs. but it's also the case that the city manager's request omitted unmet needs for general government. Let me just say a word about the CIP as it relates to the schools. It's absolutely a must to plan for growth in our schools. On the facilities side, it was my view several years ago that our buildings were decaying and insufficient. That's why I supported the TJ and Thackeray work, why I was so highly visible on the Mount Daniel bond campaign last fall. Ms. Connolly and I were the only two counselors to publicly support the referendum, although I think privately everyone did, and why right now I'm pushing us to move forward with community visioning, planning, and construction on GMHS Mary Ellen Henderson, with the goal to open new doors before the end of this decade. Since I came on to the council, I voted for schools budget increases of 12.4% in FY 13-14 and 9.1% in FY 14-15. Those increases were both voted after years of considerable enrollment growth, and in part to catch up to spending that had been flat or actually reduced after the Great Recession. This past September, enrollment increased by 1.6%. That's why I'm comfortable supporting a 3.3% schools budget growth for FY 15-16. Again, $1.2 million more than they've received in the past year. Because enrollment growth did take that pause in September of 14, I'm asking for the school's operating budget to come in at 3.3% this year so that we may do all the other things outlined by the manager and discussed here tonight. I grant you, it is not easy to support option one for me, knowing that it will make some teachers feel that their hard work for our children is unappreciated. I do most surely appreciate their work, to the tune of more than $1.2 million in new spending for the schools. But as a city councilor, I must also be mindful of our other hardworking public employees whose jobs also are important to our community. People such as Megan Graham, the probation counselor and Cityside Employee of the Year, who works with our youth who are in the criminal justice system to set them on a more positive course. People like the building inspectors who are, hopefully working very carefully to make sure that the new buildings that are going up are being safely built. The folks in Housing and Human Services whose work includes work with our homeless school children and, which receives obviously no publicity for obvious privacy reasons. Even our tax and fee collectors. A good day in Jody Acosta's office by the individual who we are continuing to fund, I hope, in this budget, will pay for at least a teacher, maybe two. There's a remarkable number of folks who just don't get around to paying their bills until somebody actually reaches out maybe again and calls them. These people on the city side are getting, as the manager said, an average 2.5% salary increase. I think that's fair, given the low inflation rate and the wobbly economy. But 2.5%, I think, is substantially less than the school's average salary increase. So in closing, I ask my colleagues to support option one as the best alternative for our entire community to move forward together. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I want to personally express my appreciation for everyone here, everyone who has written, everyone who has sent emails. Our citizens have spent a lot of time, particularly more this year, I think, than in any prior year on this budget. And there are some things, important things, that I think we've collectively learned as a community and things to work on in the future, because it's absolutely right. While we're voting on one budget tonight, the reality is that there's a continuing stream, if you will, that this community represents, hopefully, a long time in the future. So there are some good things in either of these options. There's no question about it. The problem I have really started early on when I felt that unrealistic expectations were being created by setting an objective before all the facts were in. And as more and more the facts have come in, the more and more that objective seems really unachievable in a responsible way. What do I mean by that? Well, as Councilmember Baruch, through his questioning, has raised very clearly we're facing a fairly significant deficit carrying over from the year before. So that's one factoid that we didn't know at the start of the process. Second thing we didn't know is that in order to get to this declared tax rate, we actually have to move expenses into next year to the tune of about $1.6 million. So those aren't cuts. That's simply moving expenditures into next year, making it harder to fund a budget without major tax increases next year and the year following. Then we're told that in order to reach this amount, this declared target, we then have to dip below our fund balance of 17%. And I want to go there for just a minute because last year and prior years, we refused to do that. And we refused to do it because we were told then by the CFO that the experts in the field say it needs to be 17% at least, not up to 17%, but 17% at least. So now I hear that in order to meet this self-declared target, we now have to dip into our fund balance below what is recommended by government chief financial officers. Then to top it all off, in order to make this option one, we actually have to lay off teachers. So what have we accomplished with this? We've pushed expenses into the future. We've not solved a debt that, a deficit that's carrying over, and we jeopardize the quality of our schools in the future in terms of laying off teachers. So for all these reasons, I'm going to vote against option one. I don't think it's responsible under the circumstances. At least option two, although it has some of the same flaws, at least we're not laying off teachers and jeopardizing our schools, which I think jeopardizes the future, not only of individuals, but jeopardizes the future of this community. Because once we start a spiral of losing quality in the schools, this community is washed up, finished, done. So for that reason, at least as between the two options that were presented tonight, option two is the more attractive, far more attractive to me than option one. So I'll be voting against option one, voting for option two, but with some significant reluctance. And I also want to speak directly to those who have talked about specific budget issues. And I want to particularly single out Councilmember Kalin for his significant contributions in the past in many areas and involving finance. And Allison Kuchma in particular has pointed out some things. I think we need to pursue their comments, but we need to do it where we can have a full dialogue with the schools, for example, earlier on in their process, where they've really started this process 6 months ago. And I think community input would be even more valuable then and more effective then than it is now. So for folks who have serious questions about the school budget and the city budget, I think one of the things we've learned this year is we really need to get at this earlier, and I do take what you've had to say very, very seriously. Finally, I just, maybe I've learned it the hard way, but you know, at the local government, it's kind of money in and services out. You know, we don't play games the way the federal government does. It prints money and sort of pushes off to the future and plays games with Social Security and whatever else. We can't do what the state does, which is grossly underfund pensions and then claim we've got a budget surplus. We learned during this course, for example, that the composite index, and let me put out this number because it really pains me a great deal to see our citizens fighting each other when the realities are not of our citizens making or even of ours. If we had the composite index of Fairfax County, our tax rate would be 6 cents lower. If we had the composite index of Loudoun County, our tax rate would be 12 cents lower. So there's some gross unfairness going in here imposed by Richmond, which simply has to change. Loudoun County, household income $3,000 less than Falls Church. They get nearly, well, they get more than 40% of their funding from the state for their schools. We get about 13%. That's your money going to Richmond, not coming back, creating an artificial conflict situation here in the city. So that is something we simply have to address. Let me conclude by saying I didn't want to set a target at the beginning of this. I wanted to apply as much pressure as I could. I've supported every effort to cut costs where I felt that they were responsible. I've supported every effort right up until last week when I said, all right, let's not arbitrarily make some cuts with the schools. Let's sit down with our managers, see where we can arrive at something to see if we can't responsibly get to that lower tax rate. Well, that was rejected in favor of, no, you have two options, you have to pick. Well, if I have to pick tonight, I don't particularly like either option, but I'll pick the one that preserves the schools and doesn't lay off teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Baruch. Do you want to go next?
I'm going to reserve until after the vote.
You want to speak until the vote? Okay. Ms. Oliver?
Until after the vote.
I think that we have to start from where we are right now. And where we are right now, we're a small jurisdiction, we don't have a high commercial ratio, and we're unfairly affected by the local composite index that affects our funding available from the state for the schools. And all of these things make it very difficult for us to hold or lower our tax rate. Nobody wants to pay more money. And I know when I wasn't a politician, and I probably still am not, I used to think that people that ran for office were the people that, you know, could afford these things or didn't care particularly so much. The kinds of people that could say, what's $300 a month? It's just a couple of dinners out. Well, $300 a month is not a couple dinners out for me. When I first ran for office, I made less than 50% of the median income in this city. I supported a family of 4, and I still voted in my first budget vote to raise the tax rate because I felt that it was important to take a long-term view and not undercut our fund balance and not to defer expenses to future years. And I still believe that now. And I also voted at the time that we give tax breaks to seniors because I believe that they deserve that. Even though some of those seniors that were going to get a tax break on their real estate taxes had higher incomes than I did. So that's all my way of saying that. I think that we can make hard decisions, and that's what we're elected to council to do. We have to make hard decisions, and I think it's an irresponsible decision to hold the tax rate flat, just to hold the tax rate flat. We've already got too much one-time money going to cover recurring expenses. We've already got a school budget that if we cut it, it affects teachers. I don't always agree with the way the superintendent went about explaining why she wanted to have the salary increase and the salary restructuring that she did. But it's been promised to our teachers. There's a morale factor if we don't deliver. There's recruiting challenges if we don't deliver. And I think that as a nation, we undervalue and underpay our teachers. I'm not prepared to say that they have to look at cutting teacher salaries or cutting additional teachers. 85% of the budget is personnel for the schools. I know from my own personal experience that it's the individuals that touch my children that make a difference, and I think they should be compensated fairly. For these reasons, I'm just not going to support option 1. I think that it would be irresponsible and it would affect the future of the city. I don't love option 2, but it's better than option 1.
Ms. Conley?
I'm going to start at the end and go back to the beginning. Like Ms. Oliver, I'm not going to support option 1. I don't love option 2, but it is better. And now I'm going to give you my rationale. First, I want to thank the hundreds of people who took the time to write, attend meetings, and comment passionately on their budget priorities. That is what I love about Falls Church, the community involvement and the passion that people feel. And sitting up here, I have to tell you, I think that almost everyone who's spoken, there's something that you've said where I said, yeah, I agree with that, and I agree with that person too, and I agree with that person too. And it's impossible to meld all those into something that's going to make everybody happy. So I also want to thank the staff who spent hours and hours around the clock and on weekends building and rebuilding this budget. I think it's appropriate that we issued a proclamation tonight declaring Public Service Recognition Week because there's been a huge amount of public service that has gone into building this budget. We're a small city, and the jobs require cooperation, nimbleness, and flexibility that isn't needed in larger jurisdictions. So thank you to all the staff. I really would like to thank my fellow council members who also spent hours, and I want to single out Mr. Duncan, whose passion and love for Falls Church is unequaled. Your commitment to a flat rate has been a clarion call to all of us to keep the needs of all citizens front and center. Page 2. So through this budget process, there are a few things I've learned, things that we don't have any control over, and that is the Falls Church tax rate is higher than our neighboring counties. And on the chart Mr. Shields showed, the tax rate is competitive and lower than nearby towns and cities. I think that's something really important to keep in mind. Being a little city means that we don't benefit from the economies of scale, so it costs us more per citizen to do things than our larger counties. And that's just the way it is because we're small. We don't benefit from federal subsidies like Arlington, Alexandria, and Fairfax County do. And we don't benefit from state subsidies, as several people mentioned the LCI. And then we also have no choice but to contract some of our services out to Arlington and to Fairfax, and then we have no control over what those expenses are. Just last week, Mr. Shields brought in $135,000 in ambulance fees, I think, that we hadn't expected, and it just came in from Arlington, and we have no way to control that. So I think that's another good reason that we should keep as much as we can in-house and not only contract out what we need to. All that being said, I am really optimistic about where we're heading. Our property values keep growing, and that's a really good thing, even though that means our assessments are going up. Our location couldn't be better. Our economic development is expanding. And a year from now, this is going to be a different conversation. So I am going to support the 1 cent tax increase because this is what this budget does. The other thing is I'm kind of sad that we're focusing on a $340,000 gap and not focusing on all the things that this budget does. And it funds our valued personnel in city and schools. It funds programs that are recommended by our experts, the city manager and the superintendent. Although I think the superintendent's projects have had a much stronger microscope than the city projects, it funds all of them, and I think that's really important. And it looks to the future of our community. Like Mrs. Kutchma, I think this process is broken, and I think that we, the elected leaders on the city council and school board, need to start talking about it sooner. We need to come up with a way to talk about revenue sharing, and I think, although some people say I have a conflict of interest, there's nobody in the city better situated than me to help run that conversation, and I'm ready to start to do it tomorrow. So I hope city council and school board members will step up and do that with me, because I think this process needs to be fixed. We don't need to go through this every February, March, and April. And my last thing is, to those who have brought intense negativity and unnecessary personal attacks to our discourse, I urge you to upgrade your discourse. I've been searching for a quote, and I found one that rings true, and it is this: the power of kindness is immense. It is nothing less, really, than the power to change the world. And I think if Falls Church shared kindness a little more often, we could change the debate, and we could really make our city the place that we all have a vision to be.
Thank you. Mr. Baruch, again, you wanted to defer your comments? Okay. Okay, so I'll go ahead and make mine then. As it seems like every year is a difficult year, at least since I've been on council, we have many worthy competing priorities. There's no easy answers. They're merely trade-offs. To me, however, the bottom line is we must live within our means. This was the unanimous guidance of the City Council several months ago when we gave guidance to the schools and to the city to come in with budgets that equaled revenue that created a flat tax rate. In order to achieve this, both the city and the schools would have to accept just a bit less than they would like to have. This doesn't mean I don't support the schools. On the contrary, I have 3 kids in the school system. I believe as many as everyone else on this dais combined. I have a niece in the school system. My wife works in the school system. I understand the importance of and the excellence of the schools, I believe, as well as anyone. As you've heard from Mr. Kalin, on my time at council, I've supported, I think, a 12 or maybe 14% increase in the school budget in FY14, a 9% increase in FY15. But in a year with nearly flat revenue growth, we need to watch our spending. While I appreciate and support the sentiment for teacher raises, for parity with Arlington, this may be best accomplished over time and not all in one fiscal year. I understand from our joint work session, I believe only one teacher left for Arlington last year, although several more less in previous years. Under these circumstances, I believe giving the schools over 99% of what they've asked for is reasonable. No matter how important the schools are to me personally as mayor, I feel like I need to balance the interests of the city as a whole. I believe we need to have a balanced community that's available to those on fixed income. Let's not squeeze out the elderly and those of moderate means. Continuing to raise taxes is not a sustainable solution. Nor do I believe in the long run that's necessary. I'm confident, as we've heard from others, that better times are ahead. New economic development will be coming online soon. The Harris Teeter and the Fresh Market projects will be coming online next year and should bring $1 million plus or maybe even up to $2 million in new revenue. We've also been approving area plans here in the city to plan for additional commercial growth in our downtown areas. The CIP, which maybe we'll get to in a moment, also contemplates improvements in our downtown to increase the viability and attractiveness of our business areas. The city continues to take other prudent fiscal matters. Our investment in the pension fund was unique, but wise. It's already generated returns for maybe a third of the year that are not yet booked in this tax year. Fund balance remains within guidelines. We have continued high ratings from our credit agencies. We've laid a solid foundation for Falls Church's future. But we can't get ahead of ourselves. Our immediate neighbors, Arlington and Fairfax counties, have kept their tax rates flat again. By way of comparison, Arlington's tax rate is approximately 99 cents. These rates apply not only to residential properties, but to small businesses that both jurisdictions hope to attract and retain. Just as we compete on the basis of salaries, we also compete with our neighbors on taxes as well. For these reasons, I believe that option one for a flat tax rate is the best option for Falls Church for this year and one that I'll support. Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll call vote?
Mr. Baruch?
No.
Ms. Conley?
No.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
No.
Mr. Snyder?
No.
Mr. Z?
Yes.
Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
And the motion fails 4-3.
Okay. So do we have a second motion? Would anyone like to make an additional motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of option 2.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Before we take the roll call vote, Mr. Baruch, you wanted to make some comments?
Yeah. So I think this is one of those times where as an individual who kind of came into city politics because I cared about the city and wanted to find a way of getting involved. And I'm about to make a decision that's going to actually disappoint everybody. But I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it's important to take stock of how we ended up here and why I'm going to be voting the way I am. Part of that is I think we need to break the paradigm. And I could take the action that this is really an issue between, you know, the schools or cutting the schools or fully funding the schools or raising taxes or not raising taxes, et cetera. But that's really not what this budget is about for me. This budget for me happened at minimum a year ago when the issue of whether we were going to use major parts of the fund balance to run operating. And at that point, I was pleading with my fellow council members, several of them who joined me in not going that route of using one-time money to fund operating. And at that point, the council chose to go through with burning through fund balance, which meant we started the year in about a $1.2 million hole. And we were off to the races of essentially borrowing from our children's college fund to go to lunch, because we didn't want to make the hard choices. That's what we did. And here we are today. Now I'm going to get into numbers. Now, I didn't go to law school because I'm good at numbers, but city budget's really not that complicated. It's really money in, money out, once you get rid of how the money's moving around between various funds. So even if you assume the positive revenue that's coming in, that's about 1.2 million total. Part of that is set aside $640K that's supposed to cover debt service for CIP, so you can't double trip that, so you got to pull that out. We have known impacts of 1.6 million roughly, plus another 3.2 million that we're going to have to tackle. Now, when you do the addition and subtraction, you're going to face a gap moving in this year because of how you moved around the money. Anywhere between 2.4 million, and if you subtract out the 600, which is already supposed to be allocated to pay your debt service, you're looking at a $3 million hole. And you add into that what we already heard, that we're facing an $800,000 deficit this year. So what are we going to do next year? Now, I may or may not be on the council then. Are we going to keep borrowing from the Children's College Fund to go to lunch and not make the hard decisions? I hope not. So for the council members who were pushing this last year, it's up to them to step forward. It's easy to say, I'm not going to raise taxes, but move around money to close gaps that were created based on not raising taxes. So I'm not going to support either proposal tonight, because I think it's up to those members to come forward and make some tough choices. Where are they going to truly cut in order to get to zero? Because I'm not going to support the shell game of moving money. I didn't support it last year, and I'm certainly not going to support it this year to make any political points. And if that means, upsetting the school community because it may appear that I'm not supporting teachers, that's not where it's at for me. Or if it's going to seem that I'm not supporting individuals who want a flat tax rate, that's not where it's at for me. To me, we have to have a sustainable budget as we move forward, and sort of borrowing from our kids' college funds to pay the operating expenses, to have lunch, to go out to dinner, is not the way we should be conducting ourselves, because it's going to catch up with us, and it's not sustainable in the long run. So I'm not going to support any of these options, and for those members of the council who put us here last year by pulling down the fund balance and removing any cushions, and now we're going to face another budget amendment that we're going to have to do next month where we're going to have to make cuts even though we knew that they were going to happen. It's up to them to say to this community where the tough choices are, about where the true cuts are going to be, because I'm not going to go along with the shell game.
It's 10:30, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move we extend the meeting past 10:30.
I think we're done. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. We will continue on. Mr. Burke, do you have a proposal you'd like to put forward?
I don't.
Okay. Anyone else like
to? Do you, Mr. Mayor?
I do. I voted for one.
Okay. Well, you're going to be in a tough choice then.
Well, Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I thank my colleagues for considering the level rate option. I'm sorry it did not prevail, but it got a fair and thorough hearing. We all voted our conscience, so I respect the outcome. I ask you to respect that I will not be able to support this budget alternative because my gut tells me that my highest and best use now is to send a signal of empathy to those that can accept, who can accept that their assessments have risen, but who look this year at the particulars of this year. Enrollment growth in the schools of 1.6%, teacher turnover to Arlington of 1 teacher and 4 or 5 recruits, and they see the potential for the tax rate to hold level. These people, I think, deserve to see a vote count on final passage that reflects the vigorous debate that we've had. It's very difficult for me to take this position. I try to choose my words very carefully because I do feel passionately about the things that we're engaged in here, as we all do, and try to be responsible in my actions, and certainly would never do anything to fire a teacher. I believe it's extremely important in the media that it be clear that there is no budget alternative on the table that would let go any teacher, to my understanding. My understanding in the extensive conversations and meetings that we had before and listening to Dr. Jones's original presentation was there's natural turnover and attrition in the school system that ranges above 20 in any given year. So if positions have to be trimmed back, it's not as if any individual is going to lose his or her job. And again, I think it's important to remember that last year at this time, we voted for a schools budget based on enrollment growth the previous September that had been quite robust, and the previous September before that. And so actually positions were hired for school to start this September that, had we known, we would not have needed to fund them. We just wouldn't have. And that shows up in the class sizes in kindergarten, I believe, which this year are lower by a pretty good measure. So in other words, there's room to grow because of the, I'm going to say, you know, very thoughtful budget that we tried to pass last year, So I just wanted to add those 2 points and say that it's entirely responsible and possible, given the facts on the ground in this year and the prospects that this city has for future success and growth, to enact a level tax rate. If others disagree with me, I respectfully disagree with them. And so I will not support option 2.
Any other comments? Do we want to have a motion and have a vote? We've already had the motion. Okay. Do we want to have Mr. Z?
I'd like to ask council a question. To the extent we have 7 members of council here, and if 2 of them decide to abstain, what would be the majority vote? If 2 council members choose to abstain tonight and 5 vote, what would be the majority? Is it 3-2? 3-2-2?
I believe that then if it's 3-2, the motion would carry.
All right, I just want clarity on that. Thank
So I think that just for the facts that this is predicated upon, I don't think Mr. Baruch is saying he's going to abstain, just he's going to vote no is what I heard. Is that right?
I think Dan Z was going a different route, but my plan was voting no.
Okay, so let's go ahead and take a roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Baruch?
If I can just ask a clarifying question to that. What are the purposes of abstention normally?
I'm not sure there's any specific purposes that you have to abstain. But if someone chooses not to vote for any reason, they could abstain.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Baruch?
No.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
No.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Z?
Yes.
Mayor Tarter?
No.
And the motion carries 4-3.
Okay, thank you all. On that item, we have more business to do. You're welcome to stay if you'd like. You're welcome to speak on the other items if you'd like, but that portion of our tonight's hearing is now concluded. We'll move on now to the CIP, and then the tax rate, and then also sewer rates. So anyone is welcome to stick around. You're welcome to speak if you'd like. Thank you all for coming out this evening and for your comments. Sure, we're going to take a 5-minute break, okay? 5-minute break, reconvene at 10:45. Here comes Ira.
That shot against Ken was unwarranted. Well, I don't know. We'll see what tomorrow brings. revenue sharing.
Yeah, I never got that.
No, but it's true, it saves all this bullshit. I said you really like going there. I could have stayed in the hospitality experience. It's great. They ran through the room by the way. Just some good news for the evening. There you go.
I think that was 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5-minute call.
Thank you all. Whoever's remaining, if you could either take a seat or head on outside, your choice. But we're going to get on with our meeting and hope to wrap up in the near future. Thank you all for coming out. We do have a bit of public hearing left. You're welcome to speak. If you so desire, please fill out a speaker slip. Our next item is the CIP. Are there any questions for the city manager on the CIP? The item has been called by the clerk in connection with the budget. Are there any questions for the city manager or the assistant city manager on the CIP? Are there any comments that people would like to make with respect to the CIP? While you're thinking of that, I'm going to ask whether there anyone in the public or here tonight who wishes to speak to this matter. I'm going to open it to the public. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the CIP budget or the CIP plan tonight? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Is there any comments or questions from council regarding the CIP? Mr. Baruch.
I'm going to vote against the CIP for the same reasons that I voted against the tax rate ordinance. So obviously the funding for FY16 is actually part of the budget, so which I didn't support. So it would not be genuine of me to vote in favor of it.
Okay. Also understand there is a correction that needs to be made in the CIP ordinance.
There is, Mayor Tarter, members of council, we don't have line numbering, but there's a correction to the WMATA annual obligation, local funds, and C&I equivalent, and this is on the
page 7, special transportation fund.
Right, and so we have the corrected numbers.
Page 7. Oh, sorry.
When we went through the reductions, we reduced that figure of $291,514 to a figure of
140. We reduced it by 144, so the new correct dollar amount would be 147,514. That's the last black line above the blue. So 291,514 becomes 147,514. And once you locate that, I'll give you the total. So this
What's
is
the new total?
page 7 of the ordinance.
So then the new total will be
4,219,514.
4,219?
514, 4,219,514. Those two numbers then repeat down in the fund sources. Pay as you go reduces from the 291,514 to 147,514, and the corresponding total then becomes 4,217,514.
Does this correction ripple out anywhere else?
No, the special transportation fund is a standalone fund, so just that page will correct.
Are there any other questions about either the correction or the CIP in general? Ms. Conley?
I just have one question. It's about the library parking structure. I just want to make sure that that is on the record, that I'm looking at that as a placeholder, and I think we need further discussion about that garage, the costs, and other places possibly to locate such for next year.
Yes. I have noted based on the work session, and we'll take that concurrence that over the next year we'll further work on that, other options to bring back to council and the Planning Commission as part of the next CIP.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions, or should we have a motion? Any other questions, comments? We have a motion then? Mr. Z?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt TO 15-05 on second reading.
Do we have a second? The question is as amended by city staff.
As amended.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll call vote?
Mr. Baruch?
No.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Z?
Yes.
Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
And the motion carries 6-1.
Madam Clerk, will you call the next item?
We have TO 1506, ordinance setting the rate of tax levy.
Okay.
Mayor Tarter, this is, would need to be changed. This is the original advertised rate, and so at line 81 of the ordinance, that would need to be changed from a 1.345 to 1.315.
Okay. Is everyone? Okay. Is there a motion? Are there any comments people wish to make? Okay, is there any member of the public that wishes to address this item? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Do we have a motion?
And in the staff report, there is a draft motion, and we would ask, just for the clarity of the record, that that amendment be noted in the motion, and so it would be to move to adopt TO 1506 on second reading as amended with a rate of 1.315 upon each, $1.31.5 upon each $100 of assessed real estate.
Okay. Does anyone wish to make such a motion? Ms. Conley?
I move to adopt TO 15-06 on second reading as amended with a rate of 131.5 upon each $100 of assessed real estate value.
Okay, do we have a second?
Do that right?
Second.
Okay. We have had public comment on that, did we not? If not, I'm going to just ask real quick. I think I did already open it to public comment. If not, this matter is open to the public. Seeing no public comment, the matter is closed to the public. Let's go ahead and take a roll call vote, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Baruch?
No.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
No.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Z?
Yes.
Mayor Tarter?
No.
And the motion carries 4-3.
Okay, thank you. Could you call the next item, please?
Yes. We have TO 1507, an ordinance to amend utilities to revise the sewer rates and fees as of July 1.
Mr. Shields?
So this is requested rate increase is to pay for our debt service costs for the treatment plant upgrades and to be able to continue our sewer lining project. And we do note in the staff report that Fairfax Water has informed all of our customers that they will be lowering the water rate from the current $3.27 per 1,000 gallons to a rate of $2.55. So the net effect, even with this increase in the sewer rates, that people will experience a decrease in their overall water and sewer bills even after adoption of this ordinance.
Okay. What is the rate of increase in terms of percentage or?
A 3.5% increase in the sewer rate.
And what does that come out to approximately for the average ratepayer?
It comes to between $2 and $6 per month, depending on what you're using.
Per month. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Per quarter?
Yeah, per quarter, the average increase would be, I believe I said $4 in the staff report.
Okay. Any questions of council? Comments? While you're thinking of that, I'm going to open this matter to the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this item? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Are there any comments or questions from councilors? Seeing none, why don't we go ahead and do a roll call vote, Madam Clerk?
I need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. We don't have a motion yet, do we? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion, Mr. Z?
Mayor, move to adopt TO 15-07 on second reading.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Ms. Oliver on the second. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll call vote, please?
Mr. Baruch?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Z?
Yes.
Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Okay. And so our next item, it looks like there is a consent item regarding the appointment of Chuck Anderson. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move to reappoint Chuck Anderson to the Architectural Advisory Board.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Okay. Is there any business not on the agenda anyone would like to bring up?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
The Budget and Finance Committee is scheduled to hold its regular monthly meeting tomorrow night. Were I to remain as chair of the committee, you can be certain that I would renew the effort that I pursued tonight during our discussions on the budget for the next budget year, recognizing that the course I preferred for the 15-16 budget was not the one chosen by the council majority. In fact, it was not chosen by anybody on the budget committee. I am offering to leave the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee so that it can be taken by someone who was in tonight's council majority on the budget votes. If anybody would consider moving into the role of chair, my offer to step aside is on the table.
Is there anyone who wishes to be chair of the Budget and Finance Committee?
I'll do that.
Okay, Ms. Conley is interested. Is this something we need to take action on? Do we actually vote on this? Do you know? On her being appointed chair? Don't think so? All right, well, let's do it anyway, just in case it's needed. Why don't we have a motion to appoint Ms. Conley as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee? Do we have such a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to appoint Ms. Connolly as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Congratulations. Enjoy.
Good luck with that $3 million gap. You just won yourself a $3 million gap, Ms. Conley.
You just bought yourself the best job in town, because next budget year you're going to be just showered with good news. Congratulations.
All right, so do we have any council member comments? Seeing none. With respect to the minutes, I got an email from the clerk, and I have to say, given the amount of things we've gone over, frankly, I think we had other things to focus on. Why don't we put off the minutes, if we can, at the next meeting, next regular meeting, unless there's any objection to that? Excuse me? That's okay.
For the record, the clerk has got 4 sets. She's dying to close out the year.
I hear you. I didn't look at them, did you?
No.
Okay, so I think it's probably a good bet to just go ahead and defer that till the next meeting, unless you haven't. Yes, please.
In my first action as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, I'd like to cancel the meeting tomorrow night. Is that okay?
Okay, so unless there's anything else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Good evening.